Chapter 1167. Magician didn't deny it. Instead he asked, "Can you explain why our boss gave her candy just now?" He really couldn't explain it. The recruits didn't know and thought that the devil would occasionally be as gentle as a gentle breeze. But they knew that he wouldn't be like that to others. Hunter took a step forward. Magician asked, "What's wrong?" "I suffered a huge blow. I need a break. This is too much of a shock. I wasn't prepared at all." Hunter felt like he was done for. Honestly, the fact that their captain liked the blue child was ridiculous. Magician patted his shoulder. "I can understand your feelings. We felt the same way back then." "So, that fellow chased after the troops?" Hunter's imagination wasn't bad. Magician glanced up. "You were a witness yesterday." He had witnessed his boss being pressed down. His boss was pressed down. The more Hunter thought about it, the more his world seemed to be collapsing. At this moment, a group of people had reached an uninhabited area. They split up from the rest and headed to the place where the military aircraft could land. Chin Mo glanced over, catching sight of the youngster with a lollipop in her mouth. Her face was black and stained with blood. "Little Bojio." MMH. Bojio was surprised that the Almighty would call her name in such a situation. Chin Mo asked leisurely, "Are you done with the candy?" "MMH, there's only a stick left." She sucked on it. But even she hadn't expected the Almighty to ask, "Do you want a kiss?" Bojio's collar was still being tugged at. She felt the Almighty's hand lift the white coat up, and her eyes met the handsome face that was very close to her. The black mask had long been pulled up to his chin, and the dark color made his face look flawless and noble. A few strands of his black hair fell down, blocking his beautiful eyes and brows. Half of his body seemed to be wrapped around her, blocking not only the wind in the forest, but also the hunter's line of sight. The sudden intimacy. As his thin lips landed, the scent of tobacco lingered around her. Bojio felt her breath being sucked away. Her heart seemed to be scratched by a furry claw, a layer of sweetness gushing out. It was a light kiss, like a candy hidden in the Almighty's pocket. Both of their lips had the taste of oranges. Traces of numbness came from between their lips and slid over their skin. For a moment, the only thing left in her nose was the unique taste of a man. It was the smell of gunpowder with a hint of mint and tobacco, making it hard for her to let go. Magician and Hunter, who were standing not far away from them, froze. "Boss, are you bullying us because we haven't been in a relationship before? Is that why you're acting so nonchalant? Even if you pull up your clothes like that, we still know how to kiss, okay?" Could it be? Magician and Hunter looked at each other. Based on their understanding of their boss, this meant that he didn't care whether they knew or not. On the other side, Bojio's breathing was erratic. The corners of her mouth curled up faintly. Her head was still half covered by the white coat, and her little face was flushed. Unfortunately, the color of her face could not be seen at all. Chapter 1168. There was a hint of a smile in the Almighty's voice when he said that. It was a classic honey trap. Bojio couldn't guard against it, and didn't want to either. Hence, she stood there and allowed the Almighty to wipe his face. As for the destructive gazes from the side, Bojio wasn't bothered. Anyway, it was a good chance for others to know that the Almighty was hers. When Hunter and Magician returned to the military unit, they felt as though they were floating. In the past, they had been gossiping about their relationship as a joke. Now that they were in a relationship, how could they gossip? It was against the rules in the military unit. Boss, why exactly did he do that? Not to mention the ambiguous kiss just now, the candy incident had spread throughout the entire army in less than a morning. Everyone was trying to guess their relationship, and naturally, the old general heard about it. "What did you say? That youngster gave candy? Was he lying to me? Or was he joking?" The old general took a sip of tea. The adjutant stepped forward, reporting, "It's completely true, sir." The old general wanted to say something else. The person in question was already standing at the door. He was dressed in his military uniform, standing against the light. His aura made the adjutant, who had been in this position for many years, feel a little fearful. No, he couldn't be fearful. After all, he was still his junior. The old general's reaction would be swift. His gossipy face had turned into a bright smile, like a wise man with many layers of knowledge. You're here? The mission was a success. Chinemo walked in and gave a standard salute, his tone lazy. I'm sure you've heard. The old general took a sip of tea. Heard? What did you hear? It has nothing to do with me. Chinemo didn't beat around the bush, going straight to the point. The old general pretended to be confused, turning towards his adjutant. This youngster is speaking in riddles again. What does he want? Reporting, I'm not sure. The adjutant was an honest man, his face turning red the moment he lied. Since the chief is so concerned about recruit number 10, you should be aware of his recent movements. For example, the rumors about him suppressing me should have reached you a long time ago. Adjutant Lee is a messenger, so it's not hard for him to find out such information. Since the chief insists that he hasn't heard of it, as the person involved, I can explain it to him. I have a special relationship with recruit number 10, so it's not suitable for us to go on a mission together. She won't be part of the operation team for this overseas mission. Liemo nodded. The old general's expression turned serious for the first time. He reached out and pinched his glabella. Chinemo, you aren't an emotional person. Chinmo's expression turned serious. Chinemo, you aren't an emotional person. When someone points a gun at her head, I can't stay calm. If I don't stay calm, I won't be able to complete the mission. The old general looked at him and said, but today you did very well. It's different outside the country. Even at this moment, Chinmo's thoughts were clear. We won't have any reinforcements there, we won't be able to disguise ourselves, and we won't even have a path of retreat. The old general had his own insistence. Number 10 is a rare technical soldier. I admit it. When Chinemo said these 3 words, he could even imagine a certain someone sitting in front of the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Even the coldness in his eyes melted. He smiled faintly. There aren't many people who are better than him in terms of network technology. The adjutant standing at the side. What's with the feeling of being sold? But, with that, Chinemo paused and glanced at the old general, his tone calm. If it was your daughter, would you let her go to the battlefield? The old general had a daughter, and he had wanted her to get to know this cold boy. He was a soldier, and indeed, he had never thought of letting his daughter go to the front line. What kind of place was that? It was a place where people could eat people. Chinemo smiled, and there was an indescribable emotion in his words. You wouldn't. The old general choked, and for a moment he couldn't say a word. In the end he said weakly, Cold boy, you are being unreasonable. That isn't your daughter. That isn't my daughter. Chinemo stood up, stuffing one hand into his pocket. He looked lazy, but in fact, there was a glint in the corner of his eyes. He spoke in a casual tone, but the words that came out of his mouth shocked the other 2. That's my life. Just 5 short words. The old general couldn't say another word. Chinemo stood with his back to the light, and his voice came again. For the mission the day after tomorrow, think of a way to make her stay. This kind of conversation would not be heard by a 4th person other than the 3 of them. After Chinemo left, the air in the room seemed to have quietened down. After an unknown period of time, the sound of the clock shaking could be heard. The old general knocked on the stainless steel in his hand. Was that fellow asking me for a favor? I think so. Even though it was unbelievable, the adjutant was still suppressed by the words, that is my life, until now. Who could ask the devil to ask someone for a favor? It was hard to imagine that such words would come out of the devil's mouth. However, it was precisely because of this. He and the old general would understand the significance of number 10 to him. Send the name list. The old general put down his cup, his gaze a little heavy. The day after tomorrow seemed to have been decided. Even he was just cooperating with the work on this mission. No one could predict how dangerous it would be. Most of the people who came had a rough idea. The stricter the selection, the more unpredictable it was. In fact, after today's incident, there were already 2 people with psychological problems. They were indeed the best of the best in the military, and they were also very brave. However, the quality of their sleep would directly reflect the situation. The doctor had already marked a cross on the psychological aspect. This mission didn't only require physical conditions, but also psychological endurance. After all, the other party had a psychological hypnotist. That would be the real nightmare. The military didn't slack off in their training. Even if they completed a rescue mission, they still had to do what they had to do. The further they went, the more intense the selection became. Basically, everyone was covered in mud. Perhaps it was because of the rumors or the exhaustion from the training, but one of the new recruits suddenly stood up during the break. He looked towards Bojio. Do you dare to compete? During the mission, the new recruit was at the periphery and wasn't sure what was going on. Chapter 1169. Bojio wiped the sweat off her chin when she was called. She glanced up, her gaze deep. Prince was in the same dormitory as Bojio and they were in the same team. Moreover, they had been together for such a long time. He knew Bojio's performance better than anyone else. Now, someone said that she had relied on her connections to get her position. That was so frustrating. Prince wanted to stand up for her. After all, he came from the military and had a fiery temper. He hadn't expected someone to interrupt him. What do you want to compete in? It was Bojio. She stood up with one hand stuffed into her pocket, and the other hand behind her back, wiping the last drop of sweat off her chin. Her tone was calm. No one in the military would be too harsh. Someone had suggested this challenge because he was responsible for the mission. He knew how hard it was to become a technical soldier, but he had to be someone worthy of their protection. You pick. That was the recruit's reply. Bojio glanced up. I'm fine with anything. Then let's not compete in a single match. After today's training, we'll meet in the jungle. According to the international jungle rules, regardless of the method, the one who explodes first wins. It was rare for a recruit to have such a challenge. That recruit also knew that according to the previous rumors, it was their technical soldiers who had destroyed the opposing team. But the others didn't know that there was a sniper among them. If there hadn't been an outstanding sniper, Number 10 wouldn't have been able to infiltrate the enemy camp. They were the last to be sacrificed. From the start to the end, they hadn't seen Number 10. The reason why they chose the jungle challenge was to tell the recruit that if the technical soldier was too weak during an overseas mission, he would be a burden to the entire operation team. Bojio understood what he meant. She drank a mouthful of water and replied, "Okay." Prince opened his mouth. He wanted to tell Bojio that this was the recruit with the highest qualities in Team 2. His sniping and concealment skills were top-notch. She should consider before agreeing. But on second thought, if he was in her shoes, he would have accepted the challenge too. But, brother, tell me the truth. What exactly is your relationship with the devil? Was it really as the rumors said? The military didn't allow such special feelings. Two men. Even if they weren't in the military, it wasn't possible. If this was true, even the great devil would have to be demoted in rank. Even though she hadn't been in the military, she knew the logic behind it. She smiled. What do you think our relationship is? This question made Prince choke. What should he say? F***ck. Just as Prince's face turned green, Bojio opened her mouth again, her tone leisurely. Family. Family members. Prince's eyes widened. What do you mean? Holy sh**t, he was even stuttering. It was mainly because this word was too misleading. Bojio arched a brow and pointed at herself. I'm handsome, right? Captain is handsome too. It's easy to tell. Prince. Are you praising yourself or answering my question? Don't tell me you're brothers. Prince chuckled. Bojio turned nonchalant. Congratulations, you got it right. But we aren't blood-related, we're cousins. Cousins? Prince felt that something was amiss. Then why did you suppress the devil that day? Bojio arched a brow. I just wanted to ask my brother to not tell anyone about our relationship, so that the people here wouldn't have any ill feelings towards me. We are all new soldiers and I don't know how to fold my blanket. It's embarrassing. Don't you want people to know that your uncle is our old general? Bojio raised her eyebrows. Prince found the first half reasonable, but when he heard the last sentence, his expression darkened. He pointed at Bojio. F***ck, how did she know? That didn't make sense. Bojio took another sip of water, a devilish smile on her face. So you believe me now? Me, tell me how you know my identity first. Prince thought to himself. Wasn't his disguise good enough? He hadn't even interacted with his uncle before. Bojio replied slowly, I'll find out if I want to. Youngster, you're still too naive. It's something that can be settled with a computer. How can it be so troublesome? Prince was stunned. He held on to Lin Fan's hand. Brother, please don't tell anyone about this. I really want to join the army. Sure. Bojio placed the water down. Tell me your conditions. Prince glared. Another F***king condition? Why did he join the military instead of being a robber? Tell me, what are your conditions? Prince was behaving like a little wife. Bojio pointed at her phone. I was warned by my captain that if I use my phone again, he'll kick me out of the military. Think of a way to get me a phone. We can't contact anyone in the military. Prince had his principles. Oh, Bojio replied. Then I'll go talk to my roommates about your family background. F***ck. Prince reached out and pulled her back. Promise me that you won't include any pictures in your messages, and the topic can't be related to the military. Also, you can't describe the situation here. Bojio looked at him. Do you think I'm committing treason? Of course I wouldn't do such a thing. I'm just sending a message to my teammates. Teammates? Prince was dumbfounded. Do you miss your army unit? Bojio glanced up at the sky. She felt that she had to hide her identity since there was a video online of her admitting to being a girl. Even though the military wouldn't be able to see it since it was a sealed-off place, it was better to keep a low profile. I miss it. Bojio's words were true. Sometimes, whenever she saw the computer and touched the keyboard, she would be reminded of that period of time. She would sit in the club with those people and beat them up. Sometimes she would flash into the blood pool to kill them. After killing them, they would leave with a chicken wing in their mouths and oil on their hands. At that time, Yaoyao would be sitting beside her, watching Coco and Fengshang fight for the MVP. Bojio's gaze softened when she thought about it. Those eyes used to be dark and cold, but now they seemed to be reflecting something in them. Prince looked at the youngster and was reminded of his time in the military. At that time, he had been a cold and aloof military prince who was invincible in close combat. Why did he seem to have changed after coming to this military unit? This military unit was poisonous. All right, I'll get one. Don't tell anyone about this. Prince left with his conditions. He was still thinking about how formidable his cousin was. The devil was already inhuman and now, there was another cunning one. He wouldn't be afraid of any tricks when he carried out missions in the future. In terms of tricks, they weren't weak either. After Prince got his phone, they found a place that wouldn't be easily discovered. It was a strange place. In the forest near the training ground. Hurry up. That was Prince's original words. Bojio glanced at him. Don't use such misleading words. If someone passes by, they might think that I did something to you. Prince moved 3 meters away from the youngster. How could he forget about her reputation? Indeed, he had to maintain a distance. It wouldn't be good if others thought that he was gay. His uncle would definitely break his legs. Bojio tried to switch on the phone. It wasn't her own phone, and she wasn't used to it. But it was still possible to investigate something or make a phone call to someone. F***ck, why did you download Lil P's livestream? What exactly are you doing? Bojio avoided his hand. Why are you so nervous? I'm just entertaining myself. Hurry up and take a walk. After the call, I still have to fight in the forest. I have to stand at a place where I can hear you. Prince was adamant about this. He wouldn't allow anything to go wrong with the phone he brought over. Bojio opened the livestream and entered a room. There were already many people inside. Fortunately, it hadn't started yet, which meant that she was on time. She wanted a phone because Yaoyao's competition was today, a solo livestream. That's right, a solo livestream. A solo match that would determine whether Supreme Alliance could qualify for the Asian Cup. Before this, Shui Yaoyao didn't even think that she would be in a competition like this. Shui Yaoyao was a newbie. Her opponent was one too. Even though they had the same starting point, their platform was different. YS was a famous team in Asia. Even their newbie was the center of attention. The number of fans on their official Weibo had already exceeded 6 digits. In comparison, the number of viewers on Shui Yaoyao's side was almost negligible. Such a solo match wouldn't go unnoticed. China and Country H each sent a commentator to explain the match online. But even so, all the procedures followed the international rules. This meant that it wasn't an ordinary solo match. Even though they were separated by the internet, they could still feel the tension in the room. Nervous. The netizen laughed. RCK was still live streaming yesterday. He didn't seem nervous at all. The opponent should be nervous, hahaha. I heard it's a girl. A girl's ability is limited when it comes to gaming. Don't cry when you get killed. You don't understand. China likes to do such things. Even esports relies on one's face. Who knows how she got there? Get CK to be gentler when he attacks. That's how we show our might. He doesn't have to be gentle to win. You guys don't know how the Chinese chased after CK. It seems like the fans know who to support. Isn't it always the style of the Chinese? Hahaha, I'm going there to earn some money. There would always be comments during the live stream. Perhaps some people would find it strange. However, there were indeed some girls spamming the names of their idols crazily. They had completely forgotten that this was a battle between China and Country H. While they were cheering for CK, they didn't forget to say, even if they compete, they will only embarrass China. They won't be able to beat CK. I really don't understand why she's so strong. Her skills are terrible. Does she want to be famous? I don't know. Anyway, I'm here to see my CK. I feel that he has become cuter. It was in such a situation that it was possible. Shui Yaoyao sat in front of the computer, checking the mouse and keyboard one last time. Someone else said, Supreme Alliance is past its prime. That Spadesy dragged a bunch of people down, and now he's leaving. If you ask me, Supreme Alliance deserves it. They didn't give us an explanation, and just fired him. Since he's still in the team, let's see if we can still support him. Supreme Alliance has reached its limit. Otherwise, why would they let Shui Yaoyao compete? There's nothing special about her at all. Anyone who watched the live stream could basically see these comments. The club was filled with huge screens. It was more realistic. Lin Feng clenched his fists, coughing continuously. He wanted to rush over, but he knew that it was better to be quiet. What are you going to do? Yin Hu tilted his head, probably worried that he wouldn't be able to control his temper. There were so many people waiting outside the club, waiting for news from Supreme Alliance. Regardless of what it would be a scandal. Lin Feng turned his gaze deep. I'm going to smoke. That's right, he could only smoke at this moment. I'm worried that Yao Yao will collapse. He had been scolded before. In esports, if you played well, people would praise you. Wow, what an amazing almighty. If you didn't play well, people would say how old you were, and that you should retire as soon as possible. How embarrassing. In reality, they wanted to win more than anyone else. Lin Feng couldn't forget that year when their captain wasn't around. Because he couldn't adjust his mentality, after one mistake, he had made a series of mistakes. In the end, he couldn't even see the comments on the screen. Because he had lost. As long as you lost, there was no meaning in a competition. Lin Feng stood in the corridor, his hands trembling when he lit his cigarette. Yin Hu walked over, lowered his head, and touched the cigarette he had lit. Then he leaned against the wall like him. Sometimes, you underestimate a girl's tenacity. They are braver than us in certain aspects. It was rare for Yin Hu to say so many words. Lin Feng smoked, not saying a word. Both of them knew that whoever sat in that room would have to bear this pressure. Professional esports players only looked glamorous on the surface. There was 1 minute left before the game would start. The players had a chance to speak to the team. Many people thought that Yun Hu in Wu Yao or Feng Yi would be the one guiding Yao Yao's tactics. But at this moment, Feng Yi stood up, gesturing to the other side to pause the call. Then he connected the call. When he was doing this, he was still dressed in a suit, looking like an ace manager. Just as everyone was still confused about what was happening, a voice suddenly came from beside her ear. Suddenly, she heard a voice. It was the voice of a teenager, with a hint of laziness but as clear as water. It calmed Shui Yaoyao's racing heart. Yao Yao. Chapter 1170. Spadesy. Almost all of Spadesy's fans could tell whose voice it was. Ever since that incident, no one had seen her again. Those who truly liked Spadesy didn't care if the youngster was a man or a woman. The reason they had fallen in love with Spadesy was because she had broken so many things. Before this, many people would say that only those who had undergone training were fit to play professionally. Many people didn't care about the truly skilled streamers because they were just for entertainment. Those who came from unorthodox ways wouldn't be acknowledged. But Spadesy had rushed out from the crowd. Why was she liked? Because when they watched her play, they would think of themselves. In the past, when they had just started playing, they hadn't known anything. They had even foolishly gotten excited when they had killed the first person. They were all the same, ordinary players. But in Spadesy, they saw the dream that they had wanted to have but didn't dare to have. One day, I will become a professional gamer. This was a level that anyone who liked to play games wanted to reach. They had watched as Spadesy took the FC and Zone C again and again, breaking new records time and time again. Then she went to the qualifiers, the city-level competition, the revival competition, and the National League. They had been there for every competition. They had watched as that person charged into the blood pool alone, watched as that person was splashed with coke, watched as that person lost and won again. Many of them had forgotten that if it hadn't been for this youngster, Supreme Alliance wouldn't have reached this stage. The almighty Z they liked was a girl. So what? She was still herself, the one who had always broken the rules, telling everyone that when choosing a profession, one shouldn't decide if it was suitable based on one's background. FC King. The moment these three words appeared, Spadesy's fans seemed to have a tacit understanding as they started to flood the screen. They were all calling the same name, Almighty Z. It wasn't the big Spade from before, it was Almighty Z. I miss you, come back. Honestly, without Spadesy, the competition isn't as thrilling as it used to be. Indeed. Of course, there were people who would scold her. There were people who told Bojio to scram, saying that she wasn't fit to appear, and that she shouldn't be a burden to Supreme Alliance. However, the young man didn't seem to notice any of this. Shui Yaoyao, who was wearing headphones, paused. She could only feel her face getting a little hot from excitement. If there weren't so many spectators watching, she would definitely ask where Highness Jiu was now, why he didn't even go to school, and why he couldn't find him with his phone turned off. But it was not the right time to ask. The person on the other end of the line didn't wait for her to speak, his voice as usual. Before the glory, we have to accept the embarrassment and difficulties in front of us. Only then will some people know that Supreme Alliance doesn't just have Qin Mo, Rao Rong, Yunhu, In Wu Yao, and Yu Yao Yao. The final landing spot made Shui Yaoyao's heart skip a beat. Lin Feng and Yunhu couldn't help but laugh when they heard the commotion. At this moment, Bojio asked, "Are you ready?" Shui Yaoyao's eyes were red, but she smiled and agreed. "Then let's go." It was just like what the Almighty would say at the start of every match. Now that Bojio had said it, it was calm but it wasn't easy. It was enough to make one forget everything else and focus on the outcome. He had to win the match. Yes, he had to win. The call ended. In an instant, only the sound of Shui Yaoyao logging into the game could be heard. On the other side, CK seemed to be sloppy, interacting with his fans nonchalantly. But he was a professional after all. Before this, he had seen the information of Supreme Alliance's contestant. Frankly speaking, she was just slightly better than ordinary players. Her hand speed was fast, but esports wasn't all about hand speed. It was more about awareness and control. Moreover, she had played as a sorcerer and was more of an auxiliary player. Her understanding of the character wasn't as good as his. CK entered the game. He had already thought of a strategy. He would press the line and crush the opponent. It wasn't a problem at all. It seems like both parties have chosen their characters. The shoutcaster started to synchronize. When he saw the screen, he revealed a shocked expression. Supreme Alliance's contestant has chosen an auxiliary character. It seems like the competition system has weakened her considerably. She doesn't even understand the character? The other shoutcaster shook his head. It's too dangerous. There was a huge disparity in their skills, and now she had chosen a weakened character. Could she still fight? CK lifted the corners of his lips when he saw Shui Yaoyao's character. His eyes filled with mockery. A third-rate player was indeed a third-rate player. 5 minutes. When he typed these words, the others didn't understand what he meant. CK's fans were already spamming the screen crazily. He's so handsome, my idol. Can it end in 5 minutes? Cool. CK won't even need 5 minutes to beat her. It's a one-sided abuse. This competition isn't interesting. This wasn't an official competition, it was just a solo. CK didn't have to worry about the situation. Their captain had reminded him. But everyone knew that in the Asian season, their results were obvious to all. It wasn't a big deal to be impudent at this moment. CK thought about it, moving his mouse to clear the players. Both of them chose the middle lane? That's how solo matches are. Let's see who gets the first kill. Solo matches were basically decided by the first kill. Both of them were playing as auxiliary characters, their tempo wasn't that fast. But CK said that it would end in 5 minutes. It might really end in 5 minutes. The shoutcaster looked at the situation on the screen. They are being suppressed. CK's positioning and dodging are outstanding, the outcome is obvious. But watching two auxiliary players in a solo match wasn't as satisfying as watching an assassin. It was obvious that CK was much faster than Shui Yaoyao. Not only that, Shui Yaoyao had been hit and her HP had dropped. Her positioning is too slow. I really don't understand how she managed to become a professional player. I say, you guys already know the outcome. Why are you so bothered? Shui Yaoyao moved her mouse, as though she hadn't noticed her mistake, turning her body to attack the minions. Just like that, the match was so peaceful that it made people feel bored. The shoutcaster could only give a simple explanation. Let's take a look at the matchup between the two sides. If nothing out of the ordinary happens, both of them have chosen to face each other in the middle lane. But it's obvious that compared to CK's mechanics, our beautiful Yaoyao's movements seem a little fatigued. In such a situation, she can only clear the minions at the bottom of the tower. Honestly speaking, this doesn't look like a solo match at all. Luckily, their finances aren't that different. Their finances aren't that different, right? It looks like CK is suppressing her. That's why I find it weird. I can only say that this girl is tenacious. God, CK should have jumped the tower and killed her. I think so too, probably because the equipment isn't out yet. Let's wait a little longer. But there was a problem. Some viewers who were watching the live stream realized this. That was time. Why does it feel like a long time has passed? It's been 4 minutes, right? God, CK isn't that slow usually. It is. 5 minutes later, people started to re-evaluate the match. They couldn't bring up the pace. What was going on? Even CK furrowed his brows, holding onto the mouse with one hand. He wasn't in a good mood since he hadn't expected it to be so slow. Yaoyao's support character is specially chosen to counter CK's expertise. Rao Rong looked at the match on the screen and suddenly laughed. He was as calm as the wind, his voice faint. Our sister Yaoyao's tactics are interesting? Lin Feng arched a brow. You like it? Even if you do, it won't be yours. Shut up, almighty Lin Feng. Take a look at your recovery. You need to use your brain when playing games. Rao Rong's voice and his words were completely different. Lin Feng's eyes widened. This person had only joined their team for a few days, and he was already in this state? Moreover, it felt good to be called Almighty Lin Feng by the Almighty. The naive girl automatically ignored his mocking tone. And not just use your brain. Feng Shang spoke up, his face flushed adorably as he stuttered. Feng Shang spoke up, his face blushing adorably as he stuttered. Yaoyao, in order to practice her support, she spent a lot of time. She had watched so many videos and analyzed so many skills. She had even created a table specifically for each character's skills. And that person, CK, which support was his expertise. He woke up earlier than everyone else and slept later than everyone else. Even Feng Shang couldn't count how many times he had seen Yaoyao sleeping on the chair in the internet cafe, after the National League. She would always have to wait for Uncle Ian to wake her up before she would pat her face and head to the washroom to wash her face before returning to her seat to continue her research. Countless battles and manipulations of skills. The club also had to train, but with the intensity of the training, even he wouldn't be able to endure it. Yao Yao really wanted to win. Regarding the solo match, Fengshang lifted his head, looking at the character on the screen. CK was obviously getting impatient. He waved his mouse, intending to launch his strongest attack. Even as a support, there was damage output. Moreover, his support was a tank. He had a natural advantage and could push forward with his minions. It was obvious that Yao Yao was at a disadvantage, especially with her low HP. It wasn't safe for her to stand at the bottom of the tower. The sound of CK clicking his mouse sped up. The two commentators who were watching the match from God's perspective pressed down on their headphones, straightening their backs. It's coming. Chapter 1171. What is CK trying to do? People looked at the movements in the video and leaned closer to the computer screen. The expressions on their faces showed how excited they were. F*CK, it can't be. Tower kill. Even Fengshang couldn't sit still, standing up abruptly. CK's character had already entered the tower. Using the advantage of the minions, he dealt damage to Shui Yaoyao and slowed her down with a skill. He won. This was the prediction of the netizens. Almost all of CK's fans were there. But in the next second, flash. The shoutcaster's voice came from the earpiece. Shui Yaoyao's movement is very clever, but it didn't seem to be of any use. CK had already walked to the middle of the two towers, meaning that he was going to kill her. CK didn't want to drag it any longer. 5 minutes had passed, and he couldn't even defeat a girl. It would be a humiliation to him if word got out. Moreover, this girl was just an online gamer. How could an ordinary gamer compare to him? Yao Yao run. The instant the bullet screen popped up, Shui Yaoyao turned around. Shui Yaoyao turned around and used her ultimate move. That's right, big move. Marked damage and had a speed reduction function. This was the highlight of Shui Yaoyao's support skill. At the start of the match, the shoutcaster was right. This character had been weakened in this season. But it wasn't that she couldn't fight. CK was a support, so he wasn't afraid of slow damage. It was just that the speed reduction was troublesome. He frowned, leaning to the left, waiting for the skill to recover. But at this time, the support that he had been chasing for some reason just now accelerated and rushed towards him. Courting death? CK tapped with his finger, wanting to continue his attack. But at this moment he realized that he was out of mana and only had one skill left. F*CK. CK hurriedly retreated. But he had used up his flash when he was chasing after the person. At that time, he had thought that he could kill her. But he had only forced her to use her flash. CK's right hand slid the mouse. His position was too unfavorable, in the middle of the two towers. If he leaned a little, he would be attacked by the tower. Even as a support, CK didn't have enough HP. But if he didn't, he would fall into the opponent's big move. In less than 3 seconds, CK chose to avoid the delayed critical strike of the electric circle skill. He was unavoidably hit by the tower twice, leaving him with only a little HP. CK turned around and entered the bushes at the side. He planned to leave through the river. This way, he would definitely disappear from the enemy's attack range. At this point, everyone was well aware of the opponent's mana consumption. He was out of mana and couldn't recover his skills. Even if his opponent had mana, she wouldn't be much better off. At most, she would be a little stronger than him. With that support, what else could she do without her ultimate skills? CK floated through the grass, Shui Yaoyao chasing after him. This girl is really stupid. Doesn't she know that she can't chase after the support tank? Maybe it's because I want to kill too much. I'm like that sometimes too, and this is a rare opportunity. I don't have enough critical hits, and I don't have any ultimate moves. I can't kill it. The shoutcasters thought so too. Moreover, when Shui Yaoyao was chasing, she didn't even hit the target because she lost her vision. It was even more impossible. If she continued to chase, she might get into trouble. Chapter 1172. Feng Shang clenched his fists anxiously. Lin Feng lifted the corners of his lips, turning towards Yin Hu. Do you think Sister Yao is going to? Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, Shui Yaoyao sped up, moving behind the wall. She didn't throw the skill towards the bushes, instead she flattened the tyrant. CK, who had intended to counterattack, was about to make his move when Shui Yaoyao flattened him. The tyrant leaped up, pulling all the aggro onto CK through the wall. With a swipe of its claws, CK was sent flying. Yaoyao was indeed out of mana, but she didn't need any more skills. She just needed a click of the mouse. A crisp sound rang out. KO. First kill. The competition was won. Almost everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. The shoutcaster was speechless. Not to mention CK himself, he was completely dumbfounded. Tyrant, she actually used the tyrant. That move is awesome. Big Spade must have used that move before. It's a familiar scene, let's feel sorry for CK. Almighty Z isn't around but her skills are still there. Even though she's handsome, she's really sinister, too sinister. The pop-up messages lit up the screen in an instant. Someone even sent her a plane. Shui Yaoyao sat there, watching the word victory appear on the screen. Only then did she feel that she had won, her palms sweating as she held onto the mouse. The team members behind her had already rushed over. Lin Feng pressed his hand on her head. Yaoyao, you've become sinister, you're drawing aggro like little blackhead. But it's fine, our team is the most sinister team, ha 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 ha. The audience in front of the computer. They had never seen someone insult their own team so much. Their hearts aching for Almighty Yin. Coco's way of expressing his joy was the most direct, reaching out to carry Shui Yaoyao, almost kissing her as though she was his rabbit. Fortunately, Feng Shang grabbed his hand. What are you doing? Yaoyao is a girl. I forgot in excitement. Why are you so nervous? Coco paused, realizing that the person in his arms was a little soft. He let go, smiling cutely. Yaoyao, we won. Yes, he had won. He could finally represent Wuxia. This time, they finally persevered to the end. Shui Yaoyao was also very happy, her face red. Was it because she was too young that there was no difference between a man and a woman at this moment? Everyone wanted to give Shui Yaoyao a hug. What exactly was he insisting on? It was probably because he didn't want to let go of any opportunity. Even if there were rumors everywhere, he still wanted to move forward towards what he wanted. Everyone was cheering. On CK's side, his face had turned green. It was obvious that he wasn't satisfied with this match, but a match was a match. In a solo, it was always about the first drop of blood. However, CK was not a petty opponent. He only left a message on the screen. See you at the Asian Cup. The commentator was still explaining the review of the match when the people on the other side had already gone offline. A portion of the fans had also turned off their computers. Even though many people thought that Shui Yaoyao's victory was just a fluke. But that didn't affect Supreme Alliance's celebration. Feng Yi walked over, raising his hand to check the time on his watch. I still have a meeting, think about what to eat tonight. Let's have a good celebration. They had obtained the qualification for the Asian Cup, but they weren't sure if that person would be back. And Little Spade, Feng Yi was a secretive person, he wouldn't reveal things easily. Chapter 1173. There was one good thing. Supreme Alliance didn't disperse. That meant there was a chance. Feng Yi pushed the glasses on his face, looking very shrewd at this moment. Shui Yaoyao took the opportunity to walk over. Her first thought was to tell His Highness Jiao about her victory. Call back. Feng Yi paused, then shook his head. I can't. Shui Yaoyao stilled, not saying a word. Feng Yi glanced at her, turning to light a cigarette. After taking 2 puffs he said, This time, Little Spade contacted me. Yaoyao, it is highly possible that Little Spade won't be coming back for the competition. Even though it might affect your morale, it isn't a bad thing for you to know about it. Prepare for the Asian Cup seriously, and don't think too much about it. Shui Yaoyao thought about it. I still have to wait for her to come back. Feng Yi's smoking hand paused and he smiled slowly. All right. It was just a word, it didn't matter if it was expectation. Regardless of when it was. When they turned back to look at the empty seat in the middle, there would always be a feeling of emptiness in their hearts. At that moment, they would always think about what it would be like when the two of them were there. The clicking sound of the mouse was heard in the club for a long time. But there was no longer the youngster who liked to turn over and help you adjust the computer settings. Shui Yaoyao glanced up. She believed that it wasn't just her. Everyone was waiting for the two of them, including their boss Feng. After the competition, Shui Yaoyao had to pack up. Since it was a live broadcast, she had to do a small platform Q&A session. There was a car parked outside the club. It was a top-notch car on the list, especially the color, dark purple. The smooth lines made it look expensive. That car often appeared in some reports, and most of the time, it was always related to some female celebrity, which meant that there wasn't a single person in Jiang City who didn't know this car. The Jiang family. The driver sat in the front, seemingly waiting for someone. He tilted his head to take a look, muttering to himself, "Why isn't young master out yet?" In fact, young master rarely watched such competitions. Moreover, it wasn't a large-scale competition, it was a live broadcast. Even the arena was very small. The driver didn't understand why young master would go there. Could it be because of Miss? Thinking of this, a smile appeared on the driver's face. It would be great if it was because of the young mistress. The new madam had always been worried that the young master would dislike them, and the atmosphere in the house was never good. Indeed, young master used to dislike young miss no matter how he looked at her. But things were different now. The driver rolled down the window a little more. Inside the club building, the atmosphere at the scene was very lively. After all, Shui Yaoyao had won the match, so this was considered her home ground. However, there was one person sitting there. His entire body seemed to be frozen. There was no expression on his face. His eyes swept over the screen once again. It's playing back. Apart from the match just now, the replay also showed the scene of Shui Yaoyao being hugged and kissed after the match. In the video, the two of them were wearing the same uniform, pure black with the Supreme Alliance logo. They looked at each other and smiled. There was a lot of other content. How many times had she seen Coco beside her? The young master of the Wendy group was said to be an illegitimate child. None of the people Qin Mo had poached seemed simple. But that was not the main point. Chapter 1174. Jiang Zhu clearly remembered that he had followed his father's instructions to bring her home for the festival. After all, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. There was no reason not to have a reunion at home. He took time off to sleep, and even moved the meeting to the next morning. But she told him that she had something to do that day and was busy. Jiang Zhu didn't mind since he was only completing his mission alone. When he returned home, the atmosphere wasn't right. Perhaps those people thought that he wasn't willing to fetch her. But the festival went on as usual. But there was more food on the table that she liked to eat. Jiang Zhu thought about it and took the food. He wanted to send it to her place. He would occasionally see news about this and knew that she was practicing to qualify for the Asian Cup. But who would have thought that before he drove into her neighborhood, he would see her sitting on a bench by the roadside, looking up at the sky deep in thought. She looked a little lost. Just as he was about to get out of the car, he saw someone walk past her hand. The two seemed to have made an appointment. The person smiled and iced her with his hand. Then he handed her an ice cream cone. It looked like they were on a date. She sat in the same position, even her face was flushed. He could hear her laughter. "Coco, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I would have spent the festival alone pitifully." When she said this, Coco even reached out to stroke the stray hair beside her ear, saying something like, "As long as you're happy." Then the two of them sat together and went to play with a passing cat. They smiled and knew each other very well. At that moment, Jiang Zhu's grip on the steering wheel tightened bit by bit before gradually releasing it. In the end, he didn't get out of the car or say a word. Instead, he took the opportunity when the red and green traffic lights changed to turn the car in another direction. That day, even he himself didn't know why, but he was very irritated. What did he mean by spending the festival alone pitifully? She was the one who didn't want to go home. The more Jiang Zhu wanted to control himself, the more he recalled the past. That soft fatty would always appear in front of him. He was so irritable that he wanted to argue with his father. And when he was unhappy on the anniversary of his mother's death, she was always there, sitting beside him and listening to him talk about those things. She didn't argue or make a fuss. Every time she saw him, she would be. That was why he had never exposed the fact that she liked him. He had seen that kind of gaze too many times. Of course, he knew what the other party was thinking. He did not intend to respond. Firstly, it was because he had never thought of dating while he was in school. Secondly, all his energy was focused on fighting against his father. He didn't refuse the man's care and the breakfast that was brought over. Jiang Zuo was well aware that everyone had their eyes on his face. But at that time it was a very ordinary thing. Now that he thought about it, it always made him uncomfortable. At first, it was because her mother walked into their house. Even now, he couldn't tell what was wrong with him. Just by sitting there and looking at the screen, he felt that it was blinding, especially after she was picked up and smiled. In the end, he could no longer sit still. He must be crazy. He didn't even rest and came to watch a live solo. He was probably afraid that Qin Mo's team would lose. But his footsteps seemed to be fixed in place. Chapter 1175. Even though he stood up, many people around him had already shifted their gazes over, including some reporters. Only her attention was on Coco's face. In the past, she had mentioned that she liked younger brothers. Was this the type? Jiang Zuo scoffed, his voice cold. He picked up his phone and walked to the passageway without turning back. But for some reason, he was still frustrated. He didn't want to go home with such emotions, in case there was a group of people guarding against him. To be fair, he had always felt that his father had betrayed his mother. That promise of never marrying into the family was already enough. Jiang Zuo knew that it wasn't appropriate for Mama Xue to take the blame. Over the years, his father had been involved in many affairs outside. But he had never brought them home. Mama Xue was the first. She even married into a prestigious family. Jiang Zuo didn't know how to describe his feelings. Betrayal was his first reaction. As for the rest, this marriage wasn't balanced to begin with. That person had long known that his mother would marry into the family, but hadn't said a word to him. Was it because all the fawning she had done in the past, so that she could marry into the family and become his younger sister earlier? After all, the Jiang family was rich. That was indeed his initial thought. But after spending so much time together and seeing the atmosphere in the family, he gradually understood that Mama Xue wasn't that kind of person. It wasn't that she didn't take anything, but she wasn't greedy. When his father was drunk, she would cook noodles in the kitchen and never buy anything from his father, probably because she was worried that he would be angry. Once she married into the family, she signed an agreement that her youngest son wouldn't have a share of the assets. Actually, Jiang Zuo didn't care about the assets, it was obvious. He had long left the Jiang family's sphere of influence, and even his personal assets were larger than the Jiang family's. But she seemed to be worried that he would do this. She had even specially told him that her brother was still young and had never thought about this aspect, asking him not to send her brother overseas. This person never seemed to understand the situation. There were some words that should be said to his father, not to him. Going overseas to further his studies and he didn't like it? Sometimes, Jiang Zuo really didn't know what she was thinking. Forget it, it didn't matter. Just as Jiang Zuo was about to leave, he saw Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao saw him too. She had just come out from the interview, the heat still burning on her face. She was indeed happy after winning the competition. But Shui Yaoyao hadn't expected to see him here. The Jiang family shouldn't have invested in esports. Was he waiting for her? Shui Yaoyao paused and was about to walk. A chuckle came from the other side. Young Master Jiang. It was a female broadcaster. Recently, she had been very popular on the internet. She was different from the others. Whether it was her looks or her style, she was very fairy-like. She was a beauty blogger. She was beautiful even when she was simple and elegant. That was probably why she attracted so many fans. Shui Yaoyao seemed to have understood something. She felt that if she went over now, she would probably disturb him, so she decided to wait here. The female streamer walked past her. She even had a nice fragrance. It wasn't very strong, but it was faint. It seemed to be his taste. Jiang. Chapter 1176. It should be a blessing to be liked by such a girl. And the two of them looked like a good match. Actually, after Shui Yaorao had calmed down, she felt that he seemed to be very casual when it came to finding girlfriends. Or perhaps he had never acknowledged who was the real deal, and had never put in any feelings, which was why he had always been like this. That was probably the reason. The girl today was worthy of being called a fairy. Shui Yaoyao thought that perhaps he would end his promise with her earlier. After all, that promise wasn't about self-respect no matter how she looked at it. Even if there was a girl he liked, he probably wouldn't want to mention it again. Shui Yaoyao looked up and landed her gaze on that face. That person was still so handsome that even the starry sky outside seemed to lose its color. He was different from the Almighty. Although they grew up together, their personalities were different. This person always gave people a cold feeling. Even when he smiled, he looked like a playboy. But looking at his side profile, there was something else. Because he probably didn't notice her. He turned his head, his long fingers flicking the cigarette ash, his voice carrying a smile. "What's up?" The female streamer was direct. "I always wanted to find a chance to treat you to a meal, to thank young Master Jiang for helping me out last time." "No need." It was two simple words, but his voice floated towards her. Shui Yaorao felt that it wasn't a good place for her to stand. The middle of the corridor was too obvious. Most importantly, in her current position, she could neither retreat nor advance. He probably noticed someone else's presence. The female streamer looked in her direction. Her lips curved into a smile. Her face as white as water. "It's an esports player from our company. He just won a match. He's amazing." "Young Master Jiang, do you know him?" Shui Yaoyao didn't expect that she would become the topic of conversation. At this point, she could only walk over. Wearing her uniform, she was much braver than before. "Brother." Yes, when Shui Yaoyao called out that word, she didn't have any barriers anymore. But Shui Yaoyao wasn't sure if he was willing to acknowledge her as his sister. As expected, when she called out, his handsome face was expressionless. His handsome face was expressionless as he turned to look at her. His eyes were so deep that it made her heart palpitate. "Brother?" The female streamer's beautiful eyes widened as if she had found out a secret. Even her expression became animated. "Yaoyao, are you young Master Zhang's sister?" Shui Yaorao smiled, thinking that it was best not to answer. On the other hand, a bone-chilling voice came from the other side. "Not a blood relative." "Oh." The female streamer smiled. She had never heard of the Jiang family having a daughter. Shui Yaorao was used to his denial. He didn't feel anything. She felt like she was unnecessary by just standing there. Coupled with the playful expression on the female host's face, Shui Yaoyao blushed. Luckily, there was no one around. He wanted to leave but couldn't find a suitable excuse or opportunity. It was a very delicate situation. Shui Yaorao thought that if they continued talking, she would take the chance to slip away. If she wanted to get out, she had to go in that direction. If she went in this direction, she would be retreating. Chapter 1177. Right at this moment, a figure appeared in front of them. A silhouette appeared in front of her. Before his face could be seen, his voice was heard. "Yaoyao, how long do you want us to wait for you? Come quickly." It was Coco in his battle uniform. Probably because it was winter, he was afraid of the cold and had a scarf around his neck, making his face even more beautiful. Originally, Coco had only wanted to greet her, but after seeing so many people, he paused and walked over. He arched a brow as though asking, "What's going on?" Shui Yaoyao reacted quickly, as though she had found her savior. She held onto the cat-like youngster's arm. "Did you wait too long?" In fact, they interacted like this in the team, as close as siblings. "Nonsense, I'm starving. If you don't believe me, listen to my stomach." When Coco pouted, he didn't look annoying, instead he looked cute. "But I told them to wait for you. Everyone is outside now." Shui Yaoyao turned to Jiangzhua. "Then we'll leave first." With that, she paused. "Have fun." The last 5 words were directed at the female caster. She smiled elegantly, the beauty of a Jiangnan girl, full of immortality. Okay, bye. On the other hand, Jiangzhou was expressionless and cold, as though he hadn't heard her. Regardless, it was good that she left. This was Shui Yaoyao's first breath of relief after leaving. Coco frowned. Why do you look as though you were a third wheel? Are they dating? She'll lower your voice. Shui Yaoyao replied. I'm not sure. But there weren't many people who could make that person wait for them. Coco shook his head. The company signed a contract. New female casters aren't allowed to date for half a year. They aren't even allowed to date? Shui Yaoyao arched a brow. That's a little overbearing. Coco was smart now. Fox Feng set the contract. If he hears you, you don't have to eat. Yaoyao. Coco pressed the elevator button as he said. Moreover, these beauty bloggers are all signed by internet celebrities, while some are recruited by their managers from schools. There are all kinds of them, but the only thing they have in common is their good looks. After all, they aren't game streamers, and the fans like them because they are single. This kind of contract exists in every company that promotes internet celebrities, and it's based on market demand. Unless it's a very unique type of internet celebrity, like my goddess, every video she releases becomes a classic. These kinds of people who rely on their looks to get into a relationship, I haven't even dated one yet. The last sentence should be the main point. Shui Yaoyao could hear the perfect resentment in his voice. She smiled and said, You can find one. That won't do. If I find one, what about my wives who watch me play games? They'll cry. Coco said as if it was true. Hearing this, Shui Yaoyao's heart sank. So those people still can't accept that Her Highness Jiao is a girl because of this. Destroying their yearning for their male idol. Chapter 1178. Yes. The problem now was that Highness Jiao didn't seem to have any intention of returning. It was said that he had gone overseas to film a movie. But ever since the video was released, Shui Yaoyao didn't know why, but she had a feeling that she would never be able to see that figure in the esports arena again. Because it was obvious that when the video was released, there was a sense of farewell. Moreover, Highness Jiao couldn't be contacted at all. Shui Yaoyao's gaze followed the elevator lights. She didn't notice anything else. Jiangzhou, who was still standing in the long corridor, gripped his phone tightly. There wasn't a single reply to the message he sent. The female caster was still standing beside him, her smile still on her face. Young Master Jiang, do you want to walk around my workplace? He had helped her previously at the table, and seemed to be very interested in their club. This time, she had the chance to be alone. The female caster had to admit that she had long been moved. She knew that he liked her type, so naturally, she had to grab the opportunity. But she hadn't expected that he wouldn't give her any face at all. He only said one word. No. Then he walked toward the elevator. It wasn't a good time for her to strike up a conversation. There were other casters coming over. Rather than letting everyone notice him, it was better for her to take a step back. Some of them liked to snatch investors, so she had to guard against them. Shui Yaoyao's perception was actually wrong. Even if the other party was full of immortal air, he was still immortal. Everyone would think the same when they met someone they liked. There wasn't much difference. After Jiangzhou entered the elevator, the smile on his face disappeared completely. It was as though there was a heavy object pressing down on his chest. It was only when he walked out of the elevator that the heavy object on his chest seemed to be removed. But there was still no response from his phone. The message he sent was like a stone sinking into the ocean. Did that person not see it? Or did he want to be with someone else so he didn't even reply? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Jiangzhou stood there, his phone still silent. He walked to the main entrance. After all, he had sent her a message to wait for him there. But obviously she wasn't there. There were many fans walking back and forth, and the surrounding people were all discussing the competition. I think it was a fluke. I don't think so. Think about it carefully. Shui Yaoyao's teleportation, her ability to predict CK's position, and the timing of the Tyrant King are all very accurate. This isn't something anyone can do. I have a feeling that Shui Yaoyao might have predicted CK's character this time. In this game, there are many supports, but there are only 2 that can counter them. Although Shui Yaoyao's support has been weakened this season, it can still counter the support. I don't understand what you're talking about, but it's good that you won. In the past, I always felt that she was just a decoration in Supreme Alliance. 23333. You should have heard Almighty Z's call. Everyone has their own role in the team. Don't underestimate even the smallest support. I realized why you're always insulting me today. Because I play support too. To be honest, I'm a fan of Shui Yaoyao. She has finally found her place in Supreme Alliance. Don't you think that after seeing her, you want to work harder? Chapter 1179. When he heard the two passers-by discussing the last sentence. For no reason, Jiangzuo wasn't in a good mood. It was probably because the temperature outside was getting colder. It didn't feel like summer anymore. Even the air was filled with haze. Jiangzuo didn't wear much when he came, hence he felt the chill. As he listened to their discussion, his eyes deepened. Then his phone rang. Jiangzuo finally moved, but when he saw the WeChat profile picture, his breath turned colder. Young Master Jiang, are you cold standing outside? Do you need me to send you some clothes? We have some clothes in the livestream room, some for boys. Jiangzuo didn't take a second look and closed the WeChat message. The female caster was disappointed because she was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window on the third floor and could see what was happening below. But she didn't give up. After all, she had been able to add this person's WeChat because of her work. The temperature outside was getting colder. In fact, it hadn't been long since Jiangzuo sent the message. But this time, Jiangzuo lost all his patience. With a cold expression, he stuffed his phone into his pocket and walked in the direction of the car. The driver was surprised to see his young master return alone. After all, he was here to meet Missy and bring her home. Why was he alone? But as a driver who had been with the Jiang family for many years, he knew what he should and shouldn't ask. It was still noisy outside. Even if it was a small-scale solo competition, there would be a group of people watching. Most of them were young. After all, Hero was much younger than Final Fantasy and standalone CS. It was normal for there to be some noise. Jiangzuo turned a deaf ear to all of this, including the names of the two people. He leaned against the back of the seat and tugged at his collar, allowing Uncle Wang to drive. At this location and time, there would definitely be a jam. The car couldn't move and could only wait for someone to pass first. Under such circumstances, Jiangzuo rolled down the window. He wanted to take a breather, but he inadvertently glanced at the two people in uniform not far away. In an instant, he didn't know what was going on. His heart suddenly ached. It wasn't that she didn't have time to reply to his message, but she probably didn't want to. After all, she had never acted like this in front of her. She turned her face sideways and put the earphones in the boy's ears. The two of them listened to one phone and stood there casually, giving people a sense of intimacy. He could even see her lowering her head and smiling. Her face was still red as she reached out and tucked her stray hair behind her ear. Wuxia subconsciously clenched his fists. At the crossroads, the traffic lights changed. There were people coming and going, and the car could not leave. Shui Yaoyao saw Jiangzuo sitting in the car. He seemed to be incompatible with her, and even his bones were permeated with a noble aura. He sat in the back seat with his usual casual posture, just like when he appeared in front of her again after he learned that her mother would marry into the Jiang family. He also sat like this, giving off a feeling of superiority. However, he had the capital to be high and mighty. The driver was still Uncle Wang. Uncle Wang also noticed her. Shui Yaoyao was walking away. Chapter 1180. He looked as though he didn't like seeing her at such a time. Shui Yaoyao guessed that he was probably unhappy that she had interrupted his date and mentioned that she was his sister. After all, he had never been willing to admit it. Shui Yaoyao didn't make things difficult for Uncle Wang, nodding towards him as a greeting. Her retreating made Jiangzuo even more frustrated. Fortunately, he could still control himself. Even if he really wanted to ask her how he, Jiangzuo, was lacking compared to a boy. Did she know how cold it was outside and how long he had waited for her? As the car moved, the questions disappeared. Coco noticed Yao Yao's gaze following the car and glanced over, his gaze clean. What are you looking at? Young Master Zhang's car. I wanted to greet him. Shui Yao Yao turned over. We seem to have interrupted his date just now. He doesn't look too good. He must be unhappy. Coco scoffed, the arrogance of a cat. Then let him be unhappy. Did he forget that you are his sister? Shui Yao Yao waved her hands. It doesn't count if I'm not his biological sister. Even if I'm not his biological sister, I should give in. Coco pulled his rabbit over. You are our sister, Yao. Shui Yao Yao glanced at him, replying slowly. I remember I'm a month older than you, young man. F***CK. Why do you have to be so clear? This song is really nice. I'll use it for the background music in the next livestream. Coco cleverly changed the topic. Shui Yao Yao didn't continue, turning to ask. Didn't you say you were waiting for me? Where are the others? Fox Feng is probably held up. Uncle Ian and the rest are in the car. The only ones who aren't in are Lin Feng and Yin Yin. Uncle told us to wait for them here. Coco paused and said meaningfully. I have a feeling that the two of them want to talk about something alone. Otherwise, why aren't they out yet? Shui Yao Yao choked, but even she could sense that the relationship between Almighty Lin and Almighty Yun was different from before. Was it true that they were a couple? She could only ask this question with her eyes. Coco bit the rabbit ear in his arms and muttered. How scary. I'm the only straight guy left in the team. This will cause misunderstandings. Shui Yao Yao. To be honest, you're the one who looks the most like a gay in the team. However, it did take quite a long time. Shui Yao Yao took out her phone to check the time. Unexpectedly, when she turned on the screen, she saw 2 WeChat messages in silent mode. They were all sent to her by young Master Jiang. The first was position. The second message was 3 words. Come here. The message was sent 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes. At that time, she seemed to have just gotten off the elevator. Shui Yao Yao looked up at the main entrance on the west side. She thought about the car that had just driven past her. No wonder he looked a little angry. It was probably because she didn't go to the designated place according to his instructions, and made him wait for a few minutes on the 10th. She knew Jiangzhua. Except for the person he wanted to wait for, he was willing to pay the time. If he didn't want to wait, he probably felt that it wasn't worth it. She had probably wasted his time just now. But Shui Yao Yao couldn't figure out why he was looking for her. Was it because he called her brother, just now? It was highly possible. Shui Yao Yao looked at the WeChat page. She wanted to reply, but since he had already left and she was angry, there was no point in replying. Chapter 1181. The car was silent. The chauffeur could sense that his young master wasn't in a good mood. He had intended to return to the Jiang family, but his young master had changed his mind and wanted to return to his own place. After Jiangzhua returned to his room, he didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he walked to the sofa in the living room and sat down, the back of his head resting on the sofa as he stared at the ceiling. He had never done such a thing before. However, he didn't know why today was different from usual. The surroundings were too quiet. It was so quiet that he didn't know what he was doing. Even his eyes were a little empty. When he closed his eyes and opened them again, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly stood up and kicked the trash can to vent his anger. After a loud bang, everything returned to silence. He sat there, his brows furrowed. The esports ticket that had been placed beside his hand was such an eyesore. It was so eyesore that every time he saw it, he would think of certain scenes. It was really uncomfortable. He crumpled the ticket with his fingers. This series of actions caused a loud noise. It was clear that Jiangzhua was really unhappy. Ever since he had started the company, he rarely lost his temper like this. But when he was in school, he had been stubborn. Whenever he had a problem with his father, he would kick things to vent his anger. At that time, she was the only one who knew how he had vented his anger. Now, Jiangzhua lifted his head to look at the ceiling, his eyes even more empty than before. No one knew what he was thinking. He was completely silent, the silence as though he wasn't in the room. The crowd outside the entertainment department was almost gone. Coco and Shui Yao Yao were in their uniforms, leaning against the wall as they waited. I'll send them a message. In the end, Coco couldn't take it anymore, his fingers typing on his phone. At this moment, Yunhu was held up by the media, mainly because his return was a hot topic. The platform would definitely interview as many people as they could. Lin Feng sat in the lounge waiting. He felt that it was taking too long, so he opened a game on his phone. Because there was only a glass door, the soundproofing wasn't very good. He could still vaguely hear the interview question. Why did you decide to come back? I heard that once Almighty Yun missed his school abroad, it would be hard to get in again. They've reserved a spot for 3 months. If I don't come back to be with my Supreme Alliance teammates, I'll probably have regrets for the rest of my life. Yunhu paused. Compared to my studies, there's someone more important to me here. Damn. This was Lin Feng's first reaction. After all, every time Yunhu said that, the reporters would definitely link them together. As expected, the interviewer's voice rose. Could the most important person be our Lord Lin Feng? Lin Feng reached out and rubbed his ears. There was really no creativity in the interview at all. Yunhu was very cooperative. MMH, he replied. Everyone in the team is important. Almighty Yun is being bureaucratic again. All right, I won't waste any more of Almighty Yun's time. Master Lin Feng should have been waiting there for a long time. When Lin Feng heard this, he thought to himself, you've finally found a topic to write a couple about, right? Indeed, the topic of the CP would definitely be read more than the news of Almighty Yun returning to China alone. The interview was over. Chapter 1182. His broad shoulders made the simple black uniform look straight and stylish. It was no wonder so many people wanted to interview him. Lin Feng stuffed his phone into his pocket and was about to stand up. The person who was walking over suddenly bent down and landed in front of him. He placed his left hand on the chair he was sitting on and said slowly, "Why are you in a hurry?" In an instant, Lin Feng seemed to be enveloped by him. The man's beautiful chin appeared in front of him, accentuating the black uniform. He felt that the distance was a little too close. He adjusted himself instinctively and wanted to stand up. Nonsense, of course I'm in a hurry. Coco and the rest have been waiting outside for a long time. They even sent me a message. Let's go, let's go. With that, Lin Feng took a step forward. Wait a minute. Yunhu spoke again, his tone calm. Ever since I came back, you didn't seem to express anything. Express anything? Bring him out for a meal or a night at the internet cafe. This was just the beginning. Lin Feng was still standing there thinking. Yunhu had already stretched his hand out. Lin Feng didn't know what he wanted to do, or if he was crazy. He leaned forward and fiddled with Yunhu's arm. In that instant, the aura from his body intensified. Lin Feng said, F***CK. What exactly do you want to do? There was a hint of laughter in his tone. Basically, when guys got along, they would have a catchphrase. Why? I'm scared. Yunhu was still adjusting. His beautiful brows arched slightly as he moved both of Lin Feng's arms into a perfect arc. Lin Feng smirked. I'm scared. Let me tell you, I have fans too. That's right, you have many fans, Almighty Lin Feng. When Yunhu said this, his tone was calm and obviously playful. A word rolled out of Lin Feng's throat. He chuckled and scolded, scram. After a trip abroad, did he not even know how to speak properly? And what was he trying to do? Lin Feng lowered his lids and looked at his posture. He didn't know that his breath was already on Yunhu's neck. He still felt uncomfortable and wanted to move. This was a little too close. But he pressed down on his wrist. Then Yunhu bent down and crawled in from the bottom up. His entire body appeared in the arc formed by his arms. Lin Feng's head was still lowered, and the other party's actions caught him off guard. Even his thin lips touched the other party's ear. The cool sensation was soft and scary. Holy sh**t, what kind of position is this? Also, did he kiss Yunhu's ear just now? Lin Feng's eyes widened. His first reaction was to turn his face away. Otherwise, who knew where his lips would touch? Really, your sister? Lin Feng's heart clearly couldn't calm down. His lips still lingered on that unusual feeling. Although it was cold, her lips felt a little hot. She didn't know why. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. Even his fingertips felt intense. F***ck me. Calm down, it's just a touch, a light brush. It shouldn't be a big deal. Lin Feng coughed lightly. Chapter 1183. In an instant, Lin Feng's face turned red. F***ck. Did your language teacher teach you? Do you know how to use adjectives? I just touched you, that's a touch, bro. Lin Feng had never felt so awkward before. Oh. Yinhu replied nonchalantly. Then he laughed. His laughter seemed to travel from his ears to his heart. The two of them were really too close. This kind of posture. Lin Feng wanted to explode again. He inhaled deeply. Also, what are you doing? It would be weird if I didn't touch your ear while hugging you. That's right. Yinhu had made a circle with his hands before going in. They were so close that Lin Feng was hugging him. Because they were so close, Lin Feng could even feel the rise and fall of his chest when his heart beat. He wanted to let go, his scalp tingling. It was all because the man's hormones were too strong. Yinhu wouldn't give him the chance. He hugged him like a good brother. Then he lowered his head and whispered into his ear. Why? Didn't you cry when I went overseas? Now that I'm back, I'm hugging you to comfort you. Lin Feng couldn't find fault with Yinhu. After all, the hug didn't have any meaning. Lin Feng pushed him away. Comfort my ***s. I don't need it. If you mention the airport again, I'll blacklist you. Did you hear me? Didn't I say that I have fans too? I'll get my army of fans to destroy you. You're amazing. Yinhu was still laughing after being pushed away. It was a natural interaction. But as for why Yinhu took the opportunity to do something, only he knew. After leaving the country, Yinhu's thoughts changed. In the past, he was afraid to express his thoughts because he would hate him so much that he wouldn't even want to meet him. Now Yinhu only had one thought: to turn him gay. So what if he was straight? He didn't think about it, but it didn't mean that others didn't. Yinhu gradually understood that it was one thing to convince him in his heart, but it was another thing to watch him walk closer to someone else and be unable to control himself. Since Supreme Alliance could be reformed, nothing was impossible between the two of them. Even if it was impossible, he would make everything possible. Lin Feng didn't know what Yinhu was thinking about. He just felt an indescribable heat from the small space they were in. Damn it, was today's weather forecast a lie? Didn't he tell them that the weather would turn cold after autumn? He even reminded them to wear more clothes? Why is it so hot? Lin Feng turned his head away. After putting some distance between them, he felt much better. Go down. Yinhu's voice came from behind him. Lin Feng replied with an N. Both of them were wearing black uniforms with silver logos. No matter how one looked at them, they looked cool and dashing. There were still fans waiting outside. Indeed, the reason there were so many fans at the venue was because Yinhu was back. They wanted to take a look, which was why they hadn't left yet. Lin Feng hadn't expected there to be so many people there, and they were all Yinhu's fans. He arched a brow. When the fans saw that the two of them came out together, they cheered even more. Chapter 1184. This girl was special. Perhaps others treated Yinhu like a fan towards their idol, but this girl was different. During Yinhu's livestream, she had smashed many planes. That wasn't all. She had given other fans many red packets just to be the representative to send flowers. The atmosphere was just right. Sometimes the hearts of fans were really strange. They felt that no one was worthy of their idol, but when they received something substantial, they would gradually change and lean towards the person who gave them benefits. After all, idols were untouchable and the girl was by their side. Most importantly, she was beautiful and rich. Hence, no matter what she did, they wouldn't think it was too much. They even felt that her way of chasing someone was a little flirtatious. Some fans only hoped that Almighty Yin would accept this bouquet of flowers. Even the naive Lin Feng felt that the atmosphere wasn't like the usual atmosphere of a fan meeting. Moreover, Yinhu could see through the entire situation with one glance. The girl was also in the online circle, but she wasn't an esports player. Perhaps, she really liked him, but he had rejected her a long time ago. But there were some people who wouldn't take the rejection seriously. Instead, they would lie and say that they were close. The more ambiguous and fake her words, the more Yunhu felt conflicted. During that period of time, he had been busy overseas and hadn't asked Orange Horse to ban her since it wasn't a big deal. Now, it seemed like he had underestimated some people's thoughts. Yunhu arched a brow, glancing at the bouquet near him. He stuffed a hand into his pocket and laughed. Don't you know that people with boyfriends can't accept flowers from others? People with boyfriends. In that instant, all the fans froze. There were still the reporters who hadn't left. Lin Feng's first reaction was, F***ck, did Yunhu go crazy when he was in love? What was the tolerance in China? What was he trying to do? It wouldn't be good for his boyfriend if he made it public. Lin Feng could almost imagine the explosion on the official website that night. Fox Feng wouldn't be able to sleep well. Supreme Alliance had been going against the trend recently. They should get someone to take a look at their feng shui. But that was how the esports industry was. Love could sometimes turn into harm. Lin Feng had many thoughts, one after another surfacing in his mind. But the next second, there was a bouquet in his arms. What was going on? Lin Feng was a little stunned. He wanted to curse, but then he felt that there were too many people. Holding the flowers with one hand, he felt that he was a little stupid. Damn you, why did you give me my flower? Did he look like a follower? Yunhu replied slowly. Isn't it natural for a fan to send flowers to her boyfriend? What the F***ck? What the F***ck? Lin Feng was also hit. His face was hot. Who's your boyfriend? Yunhu arched a brow. The online group counts. Why? I've only left the country once and you don't want me as your CP anymore. Haven't you heard of King of Storms Road? You. At this time, Lin Feng also understood that the other party was joking. Using this method to avoid direct confrontation with the fans was not a bad idea. But F***ck, why was his heart beating so fast just now? Chapter 1185. It's nothing, it's indeed King Feng Yin. I'll accept the flowers from the one below. Lin Feng said, reaching out and placing his arm over Yunhu's shoulder. Both of them broke into smiles, unbridled, allowing the reporters to take photos. The more they acted like this, the less people would think there was anything going on between them. Being a couple wasn't a big deal in the esports industry. It was often used as a joke. Only the girl felt a little uncomfortable in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She looked at the two of them and lowered her head to send a message to a few other fans she was close with. They can't really be together, right? Impossible, it's a joke. Even if they are together, it doesn't matter. I'm a fan of this couple. The girl raised her hand. It's nothing. I just feel a little disappointed. That's true. Almighty Yin actually gave your flowers to someone else after receiving them. I feel like the two of you are too detached. Almighty Yin hasn't shown any response from the beginning. To be honest, I feel a little awkward watching you send flowers. How can you say that? Isn't it because we like him? That's right. After listening to their conversation, the fourth girl didn't speak. Actually, she was a little confused. Back then, when she joined the chat group, it was because she wanted Almighty Yin to be better. Why did things change in the end? Unknowingly, someone had changed. She had been standing close to Almighty Yin and judging from his expression, he didn't like the flowers, which was why she realized she had gone overboard. She had been clamoring for Almighty Yin to accept her as a friend since they were all fans and would join in the commotion. But thinking about it, what was the difference between this and forcing someone to marry Almighty Yin? If Almighty Yin wanted to date, he could do it himself. They were causing a commotion in a public place. Fortunately, Almighty Lin was there. It was a good way to divert attention. If not, Almighty Yin accepting the flowers would be on the news the next day. Now they were at the crucial moment of the Asian Cup. They were still thinking about private matters. Was this really okay? Who was the one who said from the start that if one liked an idol, one had to be closer to his work and stay away from his private life? Why did they forget why they liked him in the first place? Now, she actually wanted him to live according to her own imagination. That person thought about it for a moment, and finally decided to leave the group. It wasn't because of anything else, but because she didn't want to become a person that even she didn't recognize in the end. On the other side, Lin Feng's hand was placed on Yunhu's shoulder. He was very adept at dealing with the media. However, the warmth on his face couldn't be deceived. Yunhu created trouble for him the moment he came back. That was enough. Only when they entered the elevator did Lin Feng retract his hand. He coughed and looked at the flower in his left hand. He wanted to return it to its owner. Unexpectedly, Yunhu didn't accept it. Why would a man like me need flowers? Besides, didn't I give it to you just now, boyfriend? Yunhu said the last 3 words very slowly, almost with pauses between each word. Lin Feng wanted to curse again, but in the end he could only spit out. F***ck, are you addicted to playing? Yunhu watched as the elevator slid down to the first floor. He walked out first and glanced at the flower in Lin Feng's arms. It suits you. Lin Feng wanted to say that it didn't suit him. It wasn't a big deal for a man like him to hold a flower, but it was a big deal for a man like him to hold it. However, he couldn't throw the flower away. If he did, who knew what the media would write? He carried it on his shoulder, a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He was very mischievous. Honestly, if it wasn't for Lin Feng's beautiful face and straightforward behavior, he would have been a pure man who grew up in the alleys of Jiang City. The 2 of them were dressed in their uniforms, and one of them was carrying a bouquet of flowers. It was definitely eye-catching. Shui Yaoyao raised her head and saw the 2 young masters. She seemed to reach out and wave at them. Then, she shifted her gaze to the bouquet Lin Feng was carrying, her eyes full of interest. Coco was listening to the song, and was shocked by this scene. He asked instinctively, "You guys are progressing so fast?" What did they mean by progressing? Lin Feng blushed. F***ck, stop making wild guesses. This is a gift from a fan. Oh. Coco bit the rabbit's ear in his arms. I've never received flowers from a fan before. Almighty Lin Feng, can you explain why Almighty Yin is written on the bouquet? Lin Feng thought, hey, aren't you excited? He pulled Coco over and started playing with him. Shui Yaoyao thought he was shy. Yunhu's gaze was gentle. He turned over. Where's Boss Feng? He's probably still busy. Fox Feng asked us to bring you to the car first. We've already booked a place for dinner. You can go all out today. Coco's face was still red when he said this. He was obviously happy. On this day, there was no one who was unhappy. But even so, Feng Yi was still thinking of ways to contact her. However, the location of the call couldn't be found. Actually, it wasn't because Bo Jio didn't want to pick up the call. Instead, they were discovered the moment they finished their call. Prince was the first to react because the aura of the person standing with his back facing the light was too strong. He howled. He had wanted his brother to escape since they weren't there, and it wasn't easy to punish them. Unexpectedly, before he could move, a gaze swept over him. Other than coldness, he couldn't feel any other aura. In that instant, Prince froze in midair. His limbs were stiff, much less his scalp. Right now, he only had one thought. They didn't seem like cousins. The person in his military uniform walked past him. He didn't seem like someone from the military. Instead, he seemed like someone from a higher class. When the aura assaulted him, Prince froze even more. Fortunately, the person didn't stop. He probably knew his true target was in the forest. Prince heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, he heard the man spit out 2 words faintly, "Come here." Bo Jio moved her sleeves and hid her phone in the sleeves of her uniform. She stuffed a hand into her pocket and walked towards Qin Mo. Prince was still in a daze. Where's the phone he was holding? Magician stood beside him. He wanted to say something but didn't. After all, he was impressed by this brother's courage. He actually dared to be alone with the person his captain liked. He even came to the forest for a secret rendezvous. To be honest, this was a suicidal move. You're awesome, brother. Chapter 1186. Very quickly, his premonition was proven true. The person behind him spoke with a unique indifference and nobility. Hand him over to the old general and let him handle it. Yes. Magician started to lead him away. Prince's eyes widened. F***ck, Why did everyone know about his sudden appearance? Stop joking, he had already informed his uncle. Even his uncle wasn't sure which team he was in. What exactly was going on? Magician could tell what Prince was thinking from his expression. Brother, you're still too inexperienced. You're still young and inexperienced. Without the two of them. Chinemo glanced down at the person in front of him. Chinemo lowered his lids and looked at the person in front of him. He arched a brow and after a moment he said, "Hand over the thing in your hand." Bojo wanted to make up for it. "What is it?" Chinemo reached out and grabbed her wrist, which was in her pocket. Then he pulled up her sleeves and pushed them up. Under his palms was her smooth skin. It was very warm, which made his gaze deepen. Bojo's face heated up. She wasn't sure if it was because of the coldness from his hand, or because of her guilt. Since she knew she wasn't going to run away with the phone, she decided to be honest. "I didn't do anything to harm the team, and I didn't contact Grandfather Butler. Regardless of who you contacted, you aren't allowed to bring any communication devices here." Chinemo took the phone out from her sleeves. He smiled but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You guys are really capable." It wasn't a compliment. Bojo felt that she had to push the blame away. Since Prince had the old general's protection, he shouldn't be afraid. It's mainly because of Prince's connections. That was the truth. "Oh," Chinemo replied slowly. "Your friend will definitely cry if he hears that." Bojo replied honestly, during a team battle, buying teammates is an appropriate way to ensure one's survival. It's also a strategy. "What do you think are the chances of you surviving if you fall into my hands?" Chinemo asked coldly. Bojo coughed. "I won't do it a second time." Chinemo didn't reply. Bojo was about to move. Just then, Chinemo spoke again. "Come over." "It's so close, and you still want to go over?" Bojo glanced up at the person in front of her and scanned the surroundings. When she realized that no one else knew, she roughly understood the Almighty's intentions. The Almighty definitely wanted her to coax him. Definitely. She knew very well what kind of thoughts those proud little princesses in the novels usually had. Bojo smiled. She opened her arms and hugged his waist. Even though her face was dark, there was an indescribable youthful energy around her. Chinemo paused. Then he reached out and hugged her. He was probably satisfied. His brows relaxed. The more she looked at him, the cuter he was. Bojo wanted to stretch her claws and take advantage of him since it was a rare opportunity. Who would have thought that before she could even move her hand, that familiar breath landed behind her ear. Unhurriedly he said, 10 laps with weights. Bojo. Wasn't he acting coquettishly just now? What dream are you having again? Chinemo pinched the youngster's face. He didn't use much strength. It was more like he was spoiling her, but his words had shattered her fantasy. Chapter 1187. Bojo was confused. It would be great if the Almighty could just be his pretty boy quietly. Why did he have to speak? It wasn't beautiful at all. The moment she thought about it, her face was lifted up by him. He asked casually, "Do you want to kiss?" Kiss. No. Even though that face looked very noble and abstinent when she looked at it up close, she resisted the charm and turned her face away a little. But she couldn't avoid it. He looked at her for a long time, then his lips suddenly curled up. He lowered his head, and his deep gaze landed on her lips. Then he moved closer. His intention was clear. Bojo's face heated up from his breath. She stayed in that position and placed her lips on the corner of his mouth. It felt soft. He didn't move. He seemed to be allowing her to kiss him, a faint smile on his face. It was obvious that he wanted her to do whatever she wanted. Bojo arched a brow. Just as she was about to move, her waist was lifted. His lips kissed her lightly. It was so lingering that it made her heart tremble. When the numbness spread, her legs turned soft. Fortunately, he was holding on to her waist. The kiss wasn't fierce. It was gentle as though he was tasting something. Bojo's breathing was a mess. After all, the hand that went into her waist couldn't be ignored. When he saw her breathing on his shoulder, he let go and pulled a distance away from her. Bojo thought that was it, and was about to open her mouth. The next second, he pushed her against the tree. He tilted his head slightly and kissed her. This time, it was so domineering that she couldn't resist. Wuxia felt as though her entire body was on fire. When her skin touched his fingers, the slight chill and numbness made her heart beat wildly. When it surged up from her tailbone, she couldn't bear the heavy burden. She felt the breath on her lips. It was so hot and tempting. Hence, her thoughts were burned away. Her body trembled in his arms. Her heart felt as though there was a cat scratching its claws. It was so ticklish that she could only reach out and grab his arm. He seemed to have sensed her reaction. He gradually stopped. When her breathing stabilized, he leaned over again. He looked at the person in front of him. His thin lips were slightly red. His eyes seemed to be watery. He almost couldn't control himself. Idiot. Wuxia was still puzzled. How was she stupid? The Almighty always scolded her for no reason. Whenever he was arrogant, he would be like that. Why are you so good-looking? Just looking at you makes me want to kiss you. His fingers touched her face again. Their breaths were still together. After being kissed again, Wuxia felt that the Almighty she had managed to woo was exceptionally sweet. He even knew how to praise her. He stretched out his arms and hugged her with a devilish look on his face. Qin Mo didn't reject her. He unbuttoned his military jacket and pulled her into his arms. His well-defined chin rested on the youngster's head. He had probably given all his patience and gentleness to one person. Even his back view seemed different from usual. It was very quiet because they were in the forest. Wuxia could hear the beating of his heart. His heartbeat was as urgent as hers. Gradually her strength lessened. Neither of them spoke. That was the feeling after falling in love. It was as if the air was filled with the sweetness of lemon. Chapter 1188. But this wasn't the right place to date. In the military, there were many things Qin Mo had to worry about. Their embrace was interrupted by the sound of footsteps coming from afar. Qin Mo dragged her directly to the training ground for weighted running. Her heartbeat hadn't calmed down yet. All sorts of emotions were running through her. She and the Almighty were really in love now, right? That should be it. They were dating without any grudges. Wuxia carried her things and ran forward as though she was sleepwalking. This time, she didn't seem to have done anything for the Almighty to accept her. It was a pity she hadn't even used her tricks. But she would probably be able to take advantage of him in the future. Now, she had to confirm their relationship. Once the overseas mission was over, and she dealt with those people, she would find a chance to propose to the Almighty. Wuxia's thoughts were always farsighted. She was different from others when she ran with weights. Her steps were steady and she was familiar with conserving her energy. Hence, from afar, she was still a handsome youngster. But for some reason, her eyes kept glancing to the side. Her gaze swept past his perfect chin and landed on his thin lips, a layer of light. This was the kind of person who had kissed her just a moment ago. Wuxia blushed, her heart racing. She wanted to kiss him back, but she didn't have the chance. Prince was basically done with his scolding. After he was brought back, he received the same punishment. The military intercepted their messages and knew they didn't send any special messages. But such a mistake still had to be punished. In the military, punishment wouldn't be spared just because of their status. As a depressed prince, he couldn't understand why the fellow who was running with weights was so happy after being punished. Since when did this person become so enlightened? Standing not far away, Qin Mo, who was dressed in his military uniform, seemed to be laughing silently. Magician, who was walking over, was startled by the laughter and stopped in his tracks. What was going on? In reality, Qin Mo was restraining himself since he couldn't be too obvious. Perhaps he didn't realize that the corners of his lips had never moved down. Magician felt his scalp go numb. He gulped and asked, "Boss, are you in a good mood?" The devil had never smiled in such a way before. It was a piercing sight. He thought that the boss would just glance at him. Who would have thought that the answer he got would be a smiling N? Magician couldn't stand it anymore. Because of number 10 who was punished to run? Qin Mo glanced over, the smile still in his eyes. "Why are you so concerned about my private life?" Magician immediately stood up, his heel touching the ground. No, I don't care. Whoever dared to care would die. Chin Emo retracted his gaze and looked at the figure that was still running. He smiled again, like the moon in the night, as though he wasn't a subordinate in front of him. There was really no end to it. Magician stood at the side, feeling that his boss was showing off. That smile really made him want to curse. Boss, we are still a group of single dogs. Please don't be like this. It wasn't easy for him to stop laughing. It was the old general who had something to discuss with boss. Before he left, the boss tossed him a bunch of keys. After a certain someone finishes her run, ask her to take a shower in my room. Chapter 1189. Prince was still oblivious to what had happened. When he saw the soldier leading him, he stood there motionless as though he had been petrified. His expression was hard to describe. Prince was wondering if he should continue running since it was lonely without anyone watching him. Magician couldn't care less about this crown prince. His boss had actually asked number 10 to go to his room to take a bath. It was like a bolt from the blue. Magician felt that he needed some peace and quiet. It was obvious that his boss didn't intend to hide it from them, but it was only limited to their operation team. As for the others in the military, it was better not to know about their relationship. Magician's heart was tormented, especially when the youngster ran over with a thin layer of sweat. Where's Captain? Magician felt as though he had eaten too much, but he continued to hold on to the key, acting natural. Number 10. Here. Bojio straightened. Even though her voice was lazy, she still followed the rules of the military. Magician turned. Follow me. They would talk when there was only the two of them. Bojio arched a brow, following him. Prince was still running. He wanted to finish his run as soon as possible, so that he could listen in. Everyone had a gossipy heart. Magician walked in front. He coughed lightly and lowered his voice. Boss wants you to take a shower in his room. All right. Bojio had a white towel around her neck. She laughed when she heard his words. Magician. What a torture. He was still the one passing the message. This reminded him of the times when he had been in junior high. The people sitting in front and behind him would always ask him to pass small notes. Honestly, didn't those in love consider the dignity of single dogs like him? It was obvious that Bojio couldn't be bothered with his feelings at this moment. Getting the Almighty was the happiest thing. When Magician turned back, the person behind him was still laughing. Really, he shouldn't have accepted this job. Magician paused. Don't be so obvious in the military. They were about to go on a mission, and many people were watching their captain. Bojio smiled. Don't worry, I won't. There must be people asking about your relationship with Captain, right? Magician felt that as someone with experience, he had to comfort her. Bojio caressed her chin. Indeed. Then how did you answer? Magician thought to himself. This person should know his limits. Bojio lifted her lips, looking devilish. Family. 2 words. Magician was once again pinned to the ground. He shouldn't have asked such a question. He was practically asking for a dog to eat. Didn't he say that he had a sense of propriety? Bojio glanced at Magician's pale face and reached out to pat his shoulder. There are many types of family members. It might not be the type you are thinking of. But do you want to hear how I managed to woo the Almighty? Magician refused to listen further, putting on a dignified look. I'll give you the key, you can go yourself. With that he ran off in tears. It was too cruel. Bojio looked at the key in her hand. She turned it around twice, still not satisfied. She finally knew what it meant to like someone. Liking someone was when you wanted the whole world to know that you were together with him. Chapter 1190. Her hands were itching. In the past, if she had a phone, she would have posted an announcement on her official Weibo account. But now, without electronic products, she wasn't able to express her joy. The time on her wrist was still moving. Bojio glanced at it. There was still some time before the jungle PK. She walked around the side and towards the Lamborghini. At this moment, there wasn't anyone near the car. Actually, other than Bojio, there weren't many people who dared to appear nearby. Bojio used her voice to unlock the car lazily. She reached out to open the car door and sat inside. The intelligence system sent a wave of excitement. But the system still had a memory. After the previous 2 replies, little Blackie didn't expect its owner to drive it away. I chased him. Bojio tapped her fingers on the steering wheel and laughed arrogantly. Isn't Daddy amazing? For the first time, little Blackie didn't want to speak. What exactly was Master here for? The Almighty even praised me. You should know that it isn't easy for someone like the Almighty to praise someone. Bojio continued. Do you think I should express something? I can't get high in the military. Why don't I ask Grandfather Butler to propose marriage to the Yin family? They are overseas as well. It would be more convenient. Little Blackie. Why did you want to go ahead the moment you chased him? It had never seen such a master before. The rearview mirror reflected the youngster's image. Little Blackie didn't know what her master was thinking about. Suddenly, she broke into a smile and pressed her face against the steering wheel. She tossed and turned before spitting out. The feeling of being in love isn't bad. It's a pity you're a robot. You probably won't be able to experience it for the rest of your life. As a car, little Blackie couldn't take it anymore. Master, did you specially come here to show off your love? MH. The youngster held her chin and smiled. The Almighty's kissing skills aren't bad either. I should marry him as soon as possible. Little Blackie. It didn't want to listen. It wanted to activate the automatic blocking program. Wait a minute, F***CK, did Master press a button just now? It couldn't turn off automatically? Was she planning to let it listen from the start? Master, where was your humanity? It wasn't easy for Bojio to find someone who listened to her. Of course, she wouldn't let it go. Even if it was a car and not a person, she was going to share it with him. Her reaction was indeed rare. The heat on her face had not subsided since the beginning, and the sound of her heartbeat did not decrease even after they parted. They had just met, but she wanted to hear that person's voice again. That person had many identities. He was an esports god loved by countless people, a young major general with excellent marksmanship, and an expert criminal psychologist. After these identities faded away, he had only one identity, her boyfriend. Her boyfriend. Just the thought of it filled Bojio with sweetness. Even her smile was clearer than usual. She lazily leaned against the seat, her arms casually crossed. Dressed in a black combat uniform, she still looked very handsome. She had the vitality of a young man, but she couldn't help but feel happy. Chin-mo couldn't hold it in either. Chapter 1191. Chin-mo's smile didn't matter. The old general who was sitting opposite him almost got scalded by the tea in his mouth. Even his heart trembled. He turned and exchanged glances with the adjutant beside him. He was obviously asking what was wrong with him. The adjutant shook his head slightly, still in a daze. He was similarly shocked. In the past, the almighty devil would smile, but every time he did, it was vague. That kind of smile was definitely not a good thing. It was when he wanted to kick someone out of the army, throw some trouble for the chief to deal with, or anger the regiment commander who was stationed opposite him. In short, it was not a smile in the real sense of the word. Now, the adjutant felt as though his eyes were about to be blinded. The main thing was that the almighty devil didn't stop smiling. He didn't know what he was thinking. Cough. The old general finally couldn't take it anymore. He placed his fist by his lips and pretended to ask casually, "Are you in a good mood today?" "Am I?" When Chin-mo asked, the smile on his face disappeared. The old general didn't want to say anything else. "How dare you ask me? I'm already smiling so much. What do you think?" But such straightforward words could only be mocked in his heart. Did something good happen? The old general knew that he had to understand Chin-mo's thoughts before he went out for a mission. Chin-mo took a sip of tea and replied casually, "Same as usual." Damn it. Who would believe such a lie if it was told? The old general had a bad temper, but he couldn't do anything in front of Chin-mo. He treasured talents too much. "I asked my nephew just now. He isn't sensible. He didn't make any big mistakes, but the unit allows such small mistakes. Everything is done according to the rules, and he will be punished accordingly. After hearing the bureau chief's words, Chinemo suddenly said, "A little." What? The old general thought he was using the opportunity to kick his nephew away. Honestly, it wasn't a big deal if he really kicked him away. The mission was too dangerous. Chinmo's voice was calm. Don't let him go to any small forest in the future. It will cause misunderstandings. The old general was confused. He didn't understand why he said that, but it was a small matter. I'll get the adjutant to talk to him later. What do you think of his condition? This was what the old general wanted to ask. Chinemo placed his teacup down. Very suitable. 3 words, no more no less. The old commander had mixed feelings for a moment. Soldiers that Chinemo took a liking to were always good soldiers. However, it also meant that he had to carry out that overseas mission. Chinemo could sense the old general's thoughts. His gaze wasn't as bright as before. Instead, it was as dark as the night, giving off a sense of relief. Don't worry, once I bring my soldiers out, I will bring them all back. Actually, I already had a premonition. The old general laughed and sighed. To be honest, I'm quite proud that our Yi family has such a soldier. Don't think that he's just a hooligan. He really likes to stay in the army. I've seen his information. You guys have a pattern in selecting people. When he finished close combat and came out of the army, a psychiatrist contacted him in advance. Yes. Chinemo didn't deny it. His psychological condition isn't bad. He has 70% more self-defense awareness than the other fighting champions. The old general smiled and said, "What exactly do you like about him?" "Skills and marksmanship. Of course, these aren't the main points. Most importantly, he gives off a feeling just by standing there," Chinemo said slowly. The old general hadn't expected Chinemo to pick his nephew because of his aura. Instantly, his interest was piqued. "What feeling?" "I'm rich. I'm the crown prince." Chinemo placed his teacup down. The old general choked with his words. This really wasn't a compliment? Why did it feel like this cold fellow was describing a nouveau riche? There are many people in the army, but once we are overseas, we need to consider all aspects. We need to pick the best out of the best. These people can't have a strong military aura on them. If not, they will be recognized the moment they disguise themselves. Their psychological qualities are even more important. After all, we are facing a hypnotist this time. Mercenary organizations also look at people's appearances. Chinemo looked at the old general. Your nephew is smart, and with his unique aura, he is very suitable for this mission. The old general knew that the decisions of the personnel were approved by the higher-ups. When exactly do we set off? Chinmo's gaze was calm. At 2 in the morning the day after tomorrow, the operation team will disappear from the army with the excuse of a military exercise. It's a level 1 overseas mission, and it isn't suitable to expose your identity there. Hence, even the troops have to keep it a secret. I understand, I'll arrange everything. At this point, the old commander raised his hand and patted his shoulder. I'll leave Yilong to you. Chinemo stood up and straightened his military cap. His gaze was dark, and his reply was a military salute. On the other side, Bojio had changed into a new combat uniform after her shower. She had brought all the equipment, and even her shoes had been changed to brown military equipment. A German military knife hung behind her waist. She was checking the ammunition for the last time. The ammunition wasn't real. It was specially used by the army for military exercises. If it hit someone, they would automatically be knocked out. But the impact was still there. It would hurt a little when it hit her face. She reached out and lifted the black mask on her face, successfully covering her young and handsome face. Only a pair of extremely dark eyes could be seen. At this moment, the sky outside had darkened. Bojio held her rifle with one hand and entered the forest from the back of the training ground. Other than Crown Prince, no one else had seen her whereabouts. Prince had been running with weights as punishment. When he saw the slender figure about to enter the area, he ran over and said, I have a feeling that the devil is hostile towards me. Can you persuade your cousin? I'm just an accomplice and you're the main culprit. How am I supposed to eat if I have to run so many laps? Bojo replied insincerely. If you don't eat dinner, you can lose weight. Also, you're thinking too much. Captain is so handsome. Why would he be hostile towards you? How would I know? Prince was puzzled too, but as a good roommate, he had to remind the youngster. Pay attention when you go in. I think with that guy's sniping skills, he might be hiding there and waiting to shoot you in the head. Alright, have you played online games before? You'll get lucky and get chicken dinner. That's the logic. Don't die the moment you land. Chapter 1192. Stop bragging. You're younger than me. How can you be more experienced than me? Prince replied nonchalantly. Bojo shrugged. Without another word, she leaped into the forest. Her speed was shocking. The crown prince, who had just raised his head, swallowed hard. He had wanted to talk to the other party, but it was really annoying for him to run alone while carrying weights. However, this guy really didn't have much of a chance of winning against that team sniper. The new sniper thought the same way. He had entered the forest earlier than Bojo. They had discussed and decided to enter from different entrances, so that it would be easier to fight. That way, no one would be at a disadvantage. But when he had sent the sniper in, his roommate had said, "Are you really going to fight him? Honestly, he's just a technical soldier. He can't be compared to you. There's no point in fighting him. It's purely to make him back off. It's also to let him know that in the last drill, he single-handedly defeated the team over there because of the sniper's cooperation. If this person doesn't even know these 2 points and stays in the army just because of his connections, there will be a lot of drawbacks when carrying out missions." Needless to say, the sniper was right. His roommate didn't stop him. The temperature in the forest was slightly lower than the training ground. It was because of the vegetation. The lush trees stood quietly, and the tips of the trees that seemed to pierce through the sky swayed gently with the breeze. The exposed roots on the ground intertwined with each other and grew intertwined, like brown pythons entwining together, making love to each other. In the depths of the dense and serene forest, the sounds of birds and insects could be heard from time to time. It gave the originally dull forest a mysterious vibe. Bojo was dressed in the same color combat uniform. She held the rifle in her hands and bent her body to search for the best shooting spot. At this moment, the two of them didn't know that besides them, there was another group of mercenaries planning to invade from the north. There was this group of mercenaries because of the hostage rescue. It was all because of the hostage rescue. When Kwang, who was outside the border, heard the news, he opened his eyes that had been in deep sleep. Then he pushed the person beside him away. As the boss of an organization, he didn't look ferocious at all. He was in his 40s, and he was wearing a white coat. It was easy for people to put down their guard. However, it was this person who, as a psychiatrist, used his knowledge to kill many people. This case was reported by many police departments, because the way he killed people was too horrifying. The reason why this person was special was because he had taught 2 students. No, it shouldn't be said that he taught her. It was because both of them had attended his classes. One of them was Qin Mo while the other was Fan Zibing, Fan Jia's brother. However, it was the same 2 people. The first one felt that his teaching style wasn't suitable for him, so he ended his elective early and chose to attend another professor's class. The second one became his disciple. It had to be said that both of them were outstanding in the field of psychology. However, the former was still weaker than the latter. This had always been Kwang's evaluation. In his heart, a person without any weaknesses was the strongest. Although Qin Mo's aptitude was better. However, he was no match for Fan Bing. Chapter 1193. Zibing had been able to leave a psychological suggestion for Qin Mo before he died. This wasn't something many people could do. In Kwang's eyes, a psychologist who had been hypnotized was useless. He didn't take the people who were stationed at the borders of Wuxia seriously. After all, they had successfully transported a huge batch of goods in the past. Who would have expected the recent increase in security? With his methods, his men had been captured. Kwang had heard that the ones who had captured him were a small team from the nearby army. He had heard that there was a person with good disguise skills. But regardless of whether they were good or not, they had dared to touch his men. He had only touched one of their soldiers. He wanted to let them know that they shouldn't keep trying to cut off his source of income. Kuang was good at psychological warfare and was clear about the defense. China was vast. The uninhabited zone was many meters long, and there were some places that couldn't be detected by radar. As long as they didn't enter China's airspace, it wasn't a problem to drive a military vehicle into the uninhabited zone. However, they were strict in terms of weapons. Kuang had already thought of a solution. It was just a few guns. This was the border after all. He wanted to let them know that China couldn't do anything to him at the moment. With so many hostages, Kuang wasn't afraid of anything. Furthermore, he had wanted to find Qin Mo for a long time. It was time for the person who had caused him to lose a leg to disappear completely. Kuang narrowed his eyes, glancing at the poppy in his hands. When he lifted the corners of his lips, it was a smile, but it gave off a sinister vibe that came from the depths of his heart. Fan Jiao was standing in front of the computer, tapping on the keyboard. Kuang walked over. "How is it? Have you found the person?" "Not yet. I don't know what happened to him. He seems to have disappeared." Fan Jia's eyes were filled with disgust when she spoke. Kuang was wearing a white coat, his gait a little crooked. "Are you sure this person means something to Qin Mo?" "I'm sure." Fan Jia's eyes were still filled with sadness. "I don't know what he saw in her. She managed to get close to him just by dressing up as a man. Now that I think about it, this woman is rather scheming." Kuang glanced at Fan Jia. "Don't use your unnecessary emotions. The most important thing now is this person. Kidnap her so that Qin Mo will be captured." "Yes, master." In front of Kuang, Fang Jia had toned down her arrogance. After all, she hadn't been very successful in her mission in Wuxia. Originally, he thought that he could use those people on the internet to carry out business transportation. She hadn't expected Z to suddenly appear and mess up her plans. In reality, Fan Jia still didn't understand. Wasn't Z supposed to be dead? Why did it appear in Wuxia? In the end, Master found a way to find Z's base. She still hadn't grasped the opportunity and let Z kill a few of her people. In the past, her master always said that she was the most talented. But now, Fan Jia's eyes dimmed as she started typing again. Since she couldn't catch Z, she wanted that guy to die first. She recalled the youngster she had seen in China and instinctively disliked him. Now that she thought about it, her dislike wasn't without reason. Pretending to be a man to play esports was just to get Qin Mo. It was really disgusting. Just as Fan Jia was typing, Kuang's phone rang. He turned his head, his voice calm. "Have you arrived?" "Yes, boss, it's very simple. The defense here isn't much." In the forest, an Asian man held a phone in his hand. He was wearing a camouflage uniform and had already killed one of the guards from a certain team. He stepped on the bright red blood, and the person lying on the ground seemed to be trying to sound the alarm. Once again, he slit his throat with a military knife. Kuang listened to the commotion on the other end of the phone and smiled. "Not bad. We met a guard squatting in the forest. I have to say that the uniform boss made us wear is very useful. He thought we were from the neighboring team." The man looked like he was from Wuxia, but his accent was foreign. Kuang was very calm. "You have to be careful. You just entered the outer area. Think of a way to enter the inner area. Tell them that you were here, and leave some blood there." "Okay." The man smiled, licking the blood off the handle. "Let's go, brothers. Let's kill a few more people for fun." This group of people from the ungoverned land seemed to be born fearless. They didn't care which country they were at. In their hearts, it didn't matter if they were here. Many people were afraid of China's soldiers, but they weren't. "There seems to be light over there. It should be the other team that the man mentioned." One of the men with a tattoo on the back of his hand jumped down from the tree, pointing towards the 9 o'clock direction in the forest. His lips curved into a bloodthirsty smile. It was obvious that he had the best eyesight in the group. Usually the ones with the best eyesight were the snipers. "What are you waiting for? Let's let them feel the aura of death." It was just a group of 5, but they were arrogant as they drove into the uninhabited area. Honestly speaking, they weren't weak, but they were relying on their geographical location. Regardless of how strong the Chinese soldiers were, they might not be able to catch them in the forest. It was a piece of cake for them to harass them, kill a few people and teach them a lesson. The sky darkened. In the forest, Bojo bent her back, her long legs moving forward skillfully. She just had to be wary of the bullets flying from the highest vantage point. She knew that the person was around her, waiting for her to fall into the trap. Bojo turned and used a tree to block herself. She started to lock onto the target again. If she was the sniper, which tree would she choose? The sniper, who had been hiding in the tree for a long time, had already adjusted his breathing. He had even lowered his body a little. His gun could almost sweep a few meters in all directions. As long as there was any movement, he would be able to see it and shoot. The technical soldier wouldn't be able to escape. However, the sniper was impressed by his courage. Even if he had gotten in because of his connections, he wasn't a coward since he had accepted his challenge. It was a pity. He would have to tell that person how important shooting was during a mission. The sniper's marksmanship was good, and he was one of the best among the recruits. Hence he was confident. Chapter 1194. However, the newbie seemed to have forgotten something. A sniper was most afraid of being discovered and attacked from the back. Of course, most people wouldn't have thought of this. But Bojo was different. When she had been at the Fifth Avenue, she had relied on her judgment of the best vantage point to move through the darkness with ease. Besides, she was an assassin. Be it in the game or in real life, she was best at attacking from the back. The sniper obviously didn't know that in the esports industry, people like to call him the shadow killer. Under normal circumstances, the so-called shadow killer would sneak around to your back and give you the most fatal blow. Naturally, the sniper wasn't aware of this. In his mind, he had always been a technical soldier. A thick layer of clouds started to cover the sky above the forest, covering the entire moon. The night sky was as dark as ink. All that could be heard was the sniper trying his best to control his breathing. The sound was very soft and weak. It was a special adjustment made by the sniper to hide himself. He had his own calculations and his concealment skills were excellent. Indeed, Bojo didn't notice him. But when the youngster realized that he couldn't see where the sniper would cover him, he started to attack from the sniper's position. The wind in the forest was icy, freezing the air around him. There wasn't a single sound in the surroundings, other than the occasional chirping of insects. The sniper didn't move, observing everything in front of him. He might not be better than his opponent in terms of technique, but he would definitely be stronger in battle. Especially in such a forest, it wasn't just important to be familiar with the terrain, the natural conditions were also important. The temperature was cold today, making it hard for him to breathe. Besides, the quieter the surroundings, the more advantageous it was for him. That way, he would be able to see even the slightest movement in the grass. Just as the sniper was thinking about it, he saw something moving in the bushes in front of him. He raised his gun abruptly, adjusting his shooting angle, locking onto his target and firing with unerring accuracy. The bullets used during the drill were more like rubber bullets, producing a low and dull sound that couldn't be heard if one wasn't close. The sniper knew he had hit the target, the bushes quietened down. He adjusted the line of sight again, and saw a wild rabbit lying there. It was gray with a little bit of white. It must have been digging in the haystack just now. Now that it was lying on the dark green grass, it was discovered. The sniper furrowed his brows, feeling that something was amiss. He adjusted his direction and scanned his surroundings. There was nothing. He was probably making a fuss out of nothing. While the sniper was thinking about all this, he didn't notice a faint black shadow swiftly circling behind him from the moment he raised his gun to shoot. The path it took was also very tricky, as though it didn't even cause a ripple in the water. The figure raised her eyes, and the moonlight shone into her eyes. There was a hint of evilness at the corner of her mouth. What a pity for the little gray rabbit. However, throwing stones to test the waters was indeed the fastest method. With that thought in mind, Bojo turned sideways and quickly hid herself. She was still wearing a black mask on her face. Even when she was lying on the ground, she didn't remove her mask. Chapter 1195. She tilted her head to the side, making one last adjustment to the distance. There wasn't a single person around, only the moonlight from Tsinghua University illuminating the youngster's side profile. Her tall nose bridge and bright eyes seemed to be unable to be suppressed by the darkness. Bojio wasn't best at long-range shooting, but she had seen the Almighty's demonstrations. Breathing was important, but it was equally important not to shoot recklessly. The sniper on the tree still did not understand that once the sniper fired and missed the target, it meant that the battle was already over. That was because the sniper's greatest fear was to have his position discovered. It was obvious that the shot that landed on the gray rabbit had forced the sniper into a passive position. They were all from the military, hence they understood this point. Of course, the sniper hadn't expected someone to be lying in the bushes. He estimated the terrain and prepared to leave his current position. But at this moment, the first gunshot he had ever heard in his life rang out behind him. The speed was so fast that the sniper's eyes widened in disbelief. There was a flash of light. The sniper quickly moved his spear. But it was too late. The white smoke that rose from his body had revealed many things. Moreover, after he had been hit by the blank cartridge, he had felt a tremor and pain in his chest. If it had been a real bullet, his heart would have been blown apart. Did that person calculate that he would turn around, and that's why he shot down at this position? The impact from the blank cartridge caused him to take a step back. He had to grab onto the tree trunk to prevent himself from falling. It was a tricky angle. There was only a slight gap and he would have been killed in one shot. The sniper held onto the tree trunk, astonishment and shock filling his heart. He couldn't believe how the person had managed to find such an angle. Just because of a technical soldier? But the truth was that he had been killed in one shot. He hadn't been able to react in time. He hadn't even considered the possibility that the person had predicted his position and moved behind him to ambush him. He had been like a ghost in the night, silent. If the person hadn't fired at him, he wouldn't have been able to detect his position. This feeling made the sniper feel like he was really on the battlefield. It was over before it had even begun. If it was on the battlefield. If it was on the battlefield, he knew very well what it meant for their team's backline sniper to be eliminated like this. This meant that his blind confidence would kill his teammates. He thought he was aiming at someone, but in fact he was already being aimed at. It was said that shooting was the key to becoming a sniper. In fact, a good sniper tested too many things, such as a stable mental state and an analysis of the situation. However, he did not manage to do all of this today. The sniper froze on the spot, his entire body numb and stiff, as though he had lost all his strength. He leaned back against the tree trunk. Thinking about how terrible his previous performance was, he felt his face burning. He didn't even know what kind of situation his opponent was in, yet he could easily make a judgment. The facts proved that even if number 10 had connections, he was also capable. Chapter 1196. At this moment, the youngster, who had been lying in the bushes, stood up. She shook off the night dew on her body, her hair still carrying the scent of fresh grass. If she hadn't pulled her black mask away, it would have been hard to tell that there was another person there. The sniper watched the scene, his heart flipping over. Sweet, sour, bitter, and spicy. He didn't know what to feel. The youngster raised her gun, glancing over at him. It was obvious that he had won. The sniper chuckled bitterly, sliding down the tree trunk. In reality, the sniper was at a disadvantage against Bojio, who specialized in cutting the backline. As an esports assassin, Bojio was adept at fighting in the wild, capturing people and hiding in the bushes. Bojio didn't intend to stay in the forest for long since it was a deserted area. The temperature was freezing. Moreover, she wanted to use her new car to make the Almighty happy. She might not have experience in love, but she understood the process. 3 conditions: heat up, heat up, heat up again. That was the only way to marry her. With that, she pulled her black mask over her face, preparing to leave. The sniper also saw through the young man's plan. He had lost this match, and he would tell everyone about it. Through this match, he realized that the real battlefield might not be what he had imagined it to be. At this moment, neither of them noticed the silence in the forest. It was as though a ferocious beast was staring at them from the depths of the forest. It was the group of mercenaries that had reached the area. The 5 of them were extremely fast. The way they carried their spears was no different from the local soldiers stationed there. Since it was night time, they couldn't see each other's features. Hence, it was impossible to tell which country they were from. The only distinguishing feature was their military uniform. Just as the sniper was about to leave, he saw the figure moving past him. He paused in his action of raising his spear. Then, he turned his head and grabbed the young man. He lowered his voice and said, "There seems to be someone here. Is it because of the military exercise again? Did they send scouts here first?" Bojio didn't think much of it. She smiled. "Let them scout, it's not a big deal." It was a habit to carry a backpack on one's back. But the moment she lowered her head, she seemed to hear something. The sound was very subtle, making it impossible to determine the exact location of the other party. But for one thing, was it like a language? Bojio couldn't hear it clearly, but she frowned suddenly. She took a step back in the direction she was originally heading towards, and leaned towards the direction where the voice was coming from. The sound of her footsteps was very soft. Only the sound of her clothes brushing against the grass could be heard. It was as if the night wind was blowing very quiet. At that moment, the sniper finally witnessed the youth's ability to hide in the forest. It was so quiet that even his footsteps seemed to be judged according to the terrain. All his movements were hidden in the night. Not everyone he knew could do that. The closer Bojio got, the clearer the sound. However, the clearer it was, the easier it was to be discovered. The sniper was right behind her. The 2 of them had no idea what kind of danger they were about to step into. Chapter 1197. Bojio tilted her body and bent her waist slightly, so that she could hear the sound more clearly. But what came faster than the sound was the sudden smell of blood on the tip of his nose. That's right, it was the smell of blood. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any smell of blood here since they were using rubber bullets. It wasn't possible for them to cause any injuries. Bojio's frown deepened. At the same time, she tightened her grip on the rifle. At this moment, she heard the sound clearly. It was indeed a language, but it wasn't the language of Wuxia. It wasn't even the language of an ethnic minority. Instead, there was a mix of M and T languages. The person's voice wasn't loud either. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she was certain that they weren't Chinese. They weren't Chinese. They were wearing their camouflage uniform. Bojio's heart sank. She wanted to pull the sniper back and retreat. But at this moment, the sound not far away suddenly disappeared. It was as though a conversation had come to an abrupt end. There were a total of 5 mercenaries. The person standing in the middle seemed to have heard something. He stopped abruptly and made a shushing gesture. The others also stopped talking. Not only that, but they also exchanged glances with each other. It was clear that they had sensed something. Another prey had come knocking on their door. That was the first reaction of the 5 of them. Then, under the cover of the night, they turned and scanned their surroundings. Finally, they confirmed a point and raised the rifle in their hands. The person with the Bluetooth earpiece tilted his head. The strongest person in front smiled bloodthirstily. He threw a military knife out. With a swoosh, it slid through the bushes and shot straight at a rabbit. The sniper watched as the military knife flew past him. The youngster's reaction was extremely fast. Before the military knife could reach him, he had already moved the rabbit over. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was that such a military knife wouldn't appear in such a place. It wasn't the equipment in their military unit. In the army, what weapons the garrison soldiers used, which models, and what their functions were all kept secret. Only their own people knew, and no one would pick up the model, even if it was a military knife. The people on the other side were very fast. They didn't give the snipers any time to react and rushed over. The mercenary was dragged by the youngster, and he maintained his posture without moving. His entire body had merged with the grass beside him, and even his face was buried in it. This also meant that they couldn't see where the other party was. At first, the sniper didn't understand why the young man didn't leave immediately. After all, Rabbit was in front of him. He knew very well that if they had moved just now, they would have been killed just like this rabbit. The newcomer seemed to feel that the situation was a little boring and mumbled something. This time, the sniper's expression changed. This wasn't from his team, and he wasn't Chinese either. The sniper's reaction wasn't as fast as Bojio because of the difference in their perception of language. However, both of their hearts were the same. They couldn't sink any further. Chapter 1198. The person on the other side walked over to them. He even raised his rifle and touched the rabbit. The distance between them was less than a meter. The sniper's breathing tightened. It wasn't because he could see it, but because when someone was holding a rifle near you, you would definitely be able to sense the intense murderous aura. A rabbit. The person raised his rifle and picked up the gray rabbit. Bojio could understand his language and could hear the suspicion in his tone. Soon, the man raised his gun again and fired at the grassland. Bojio wanted to lift her head, but she lowered it once more. Fortunately, they were at a low altitude and weren't injured by the stray bullets. But the destructive power made her eyes sink. The other party was using a real rifle. That wasn't all, it was silenced. It was probably because they were in the forest and it had rained. Some of the defense systems at the border weren't perfect. This way, they wouldn't be discovered. Bojio probably didn't know what they were here for. But she knew she couldn't let them go any further. 1,000 meters away was China's first defense line. It was a common sight at the borders. Even the difference between Inner Mongolia and Outer Mongolia was due to this defense line. The inner circle was the country. Once they passed the defense line, there would be local villages. Even though there weren't many people living there, there would be scattered houses. This meant that there would be ordinary civilians living there. It was obvious what the defense line meant. Don't waste your bullets. The leader walked over and lowered his voice. Search and see if it's really a rabbit or someone else. The leader wasn't bothered. Even if there is someone, they will treat us as a unit. When we meet a patrol, we just have to keep quiet and let Bassoon answer, and we will be able to eliminate them. We'll leave after killing one more person, do you hear me? The leader was worried they wouldn't stop killing. After all, we have already entered China's borders. Once we are out of the forest, they won't be able to use their guns. Otherwise, it would be considered a breach of international law. But in this forest, once we are discovered, we will lose in terms of numbers. Hence, we have to restrain ourselves. After killing 3 people, we will leave our organization's name. This is the best way to provoke them, understand? Their hushed conversation traveled into Bojio's ears. After killing 3 people, they would kill one more? In other words, they had already killed 2 people? When? Where? If it was here, it was impossible for there to be no news to report. Could it be the regiment next door? After they had killed someone from the neighboring clan, they had jumped over here to continue killing. Organization? Bojio lowered her lids, a glint flashing past her eyes. It was cold. She thought she had a rough idea of which organization he was talking about. Recently, there was only one organization that they had made enemies with. It had to be said that these people were very fast and very agile. They were even bold and careful enough to sweep through the area just now. If it hadn't been for Bojio, she might have been shot even as she lay prone. After those people confirmed that there was nothing here, they didn't leave immediately. Instead, they expanded their search area. Such opponents were the most difficult to deal with. Chapter 1199. Fortunately, they had the terrain advantage. Both Bojio and the sniper were adept at regulating their breathing, maintaining the perfect disguise for a full 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the 5 of them stopped searching. Looks like it's just a rabbit. The leader put away his spear and said, "All right, let's not waste any more time. Take advantage of this time to take some pictures of the situation here. When we get out of here, we'll upload them to the internet." It was common knowledge that there was no signal in the no man's land. The 5 of them spoke through the Bluetooth earphones in their ears. As soon as he heard they were going to take pictures, The sniper clenched his fists. Every checkpoint at the border was very important. Once these people took a photo and posted it on the internet, it would be very easy for them to be ambushed if there were any problems at the border in the future. The sniper understood this. It was impossible for Boju not to understand. It was just that a head-on clash was extremely disadvantageous for them. After all, the other party was using real guns, and they had more people than them. Everyone was even wearing a communication earpiece. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of a one-on-one attack, but under such circumstances, it wasn't possible. The sniper also understood that if they made a sound now, not only would they be discovered, but they would also be of no use to the current situation. This was not because of anything else, but because the troops did not know that this group of people had entered. What loophole did he slip into without anyone noticing? Beads of sweat formed on the sniper's forehead. As the sound of footsteps rose, those people finally left the area around them. The sniper was the first to stand up, but the young man grabbed him back. Go back and tell Captain that there's an enemy invasion. Tell Captain Qin the general direction they're heading in. I'll follow them and mark the way. I have a USB drive on me that has the same origin as Captain Qin's USB drive. It will detect the enemy's presence within a certain range. Tell this to Captain Qin. Since they're here, we can't let them leave. The sniper's eyes darkened. No, you go back. I'll stay. It's more suitable for me to stay. You're a good sniper, but you're only suitable as a sniper. This time, it's obvious that you won't be able to use a sniper. I still have some dry goods in my bag that can be put to use. I hope that you can rush back to the base as soon as possible and inform Captain Qin. Now that the two teams are connected, they might not be able to gain any advantage here. These people will run to the next team. We can't let them roam around our base as they please. As an assassin, she had always treated the wilderness opposite her as her home. How could she tolerate some people killing their people and taking photos of them in her own territory? This was a provocation. And if this provocation was not suppressed, the other party would only become more and more unbridled. Besides, she could still remember how he had taught her calligraphy after watching a movie when she had been very young. Those who offend China will be punished no matter how far away they are. People often say that Wuxia is a country with a large population and a poor quality, etc. Yes, it was still developing, and it was indeed not perfect enough. Chapter 1200. At this moment, the lights on the second floor of the military base were still brightly lit. Someone was doing a psychological test and tactical evaluation. But he wasn't very focused. This was the third time Qin Emo raised his head to look at the door. Even though his face was still elegant, his brows weren't relaxed. The door didn't seem to have any intention of letting anyone in. The air was filled with the scent of a shower. The scent of the shower gel hadn't dissipated. But Qin Emo didn't know why he felt uneasy when he couldn't see that person today. He glanced at the clock at the side once more. Qin Emo reached out for his jacket and walked out of the room. He walked towards Bojio's dormitory. At this moment, Prince had just completed 10 rounds of weights. He was so tired that he was lying on the bed like a zombie. He hadn't eaten much for dinner, and just wanted to lie there. It was a pity that he wasn't lying in the right position. He was lying on Bojio's bed. When Qin Emo entered, he was the first person he saw. He arched a brow. Prince wanted to stretch his body, but when he saw the slender figure standing at the door, his arms stiffened. Even his yawn stopped. F***ck, who could tell him why the devil was here? Prince had always been a fearless person, but at this moment, he stood up instinctively and saluted. Captain Qin. Qin Emo glanced at him, his gaze landing on the single bunk bed behind him. Where did she go? It was a simple question, but it sent chills down Prince's spine. Even though there were many duels in the military base, there weren't many duels in the jungle. After today's phone incident, Prince had a basic understanding of the devil's methods. He had decided to betray his teammate. Since she was his family, he wouldn't be severely punished. Reporting Sugar Daddy. Prince bit his lips. Recruit number 10 was challenged by someone in the jungle. He should be in an uninhabited area outside the military base. Qin Mo's brows furrowed. *T, this was really *T. Even though he wasn't the person involved, Prince didn't think he was happy. It seemed like even if his brother won, he wouldn't be in a good state. With such a cousin, life must be tough. Prince's mind was filled with thoughts. At this moment, Qin Mo threw out another question. How long have you been in there? Prince didn't expect the other party to think about the time. If it was his previous instructor, he would definitely be furious. Sir, it should be more than 2 hours. Qin Mo tilted his head, stuffing one hand into his pocket. When he looked up, Ji Shiting's voice was heard. Even Prince, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but sigh. The other party was indeed handsome. Even someone like him, who had always won with his looks, felt a little inferior. Don't tell me this military unit selects people based on their looks? It's taking too long. This was Qin Mo's first sentence when he turned his head. For some reason, his eyes seemed to have dimmed. Prince didn't understand. Too long. She's good at taking a detour and fighting in the jungle. 2 hours is too long for her to eliminate a sniper. Qin Mo repeated himself because he was still analyzing the situation. Prince's mouth was agape. Honestly, Captain Qin, that sniper is the best rookie in the team other than Wolf. This is a battle, not a one-sided slaughter. Why did you say that he's a financial backer, and that you'll destroy him? Why did he have the feeling that someone had unknowingly shown off his little brother? Qin Mo looked at the night sky outside. He retracted his gaze and continued to ask, which direction did she enter the no man's land from? The west side of the training ground, the small forest. The moment Prince finished his sentence, the tall figure in front of him turned around. She didn't even look at his expression as she walked down the stairs. What did she mean? Prince was dumbfounded. At this moment, the sniper understood that if he continued to stay, he would only be delaying the rescue of his comrades. The military unit was only 1,000 meters away. He had to hurry so that he could pass the information to the military unit in time and save his comrades. Just as Bojio had said, she was in charge of tracking them and keeping them in the forest at the crucial moment. The forest at night was undoubtedly dangerous. The wind was chilly. Amidst the bushes, the youngster held her rifle and moved in a snake-like manner, silently catching up to the mercenaries. It wasn't because the mercenaries were slow, but because Bojio was too fast. Other than killing, their main goal was to collect information on the defense system. Hence, along the way, they used their phones to take pictures of every place with metal mesh. Of course, they couldn't touch the metal mesh because it was used to detect intruders. The moment anyone touched it, they would be electrocuted. This time, it was obvious that these mercenaries came prepared. They wore anti-electricity gloves and touched the iron net. Then they laughed. This kind of defense system really can't do anything good at the border. In the future, if anyone wants to take revenge on the Wuxia troops, they will have to wear an anti-electricity suit. The signal defense tower over there isn't bad. Another person raised his hand. Gotcha. Another photo was locked on his phone. There doesn't seem to be anyone here. We'll be inside if we go any further. Should we kill a few civilians? We've been walking for so long, I'm hungry, hahaha. Don't fight and kill all day. Have a meal and give them some fans. Bring our organization's products to them. That's the best choice. The leader raised his rifle. Are you done? It's done. Let's go to the other team, there aren't as many people here. Don't forget, we are still short of one person. After saying that, the leader was about to pass through the residential area of the nearby village and head toward the 147th Regiment. Previously, Bojio had mentioned that they couldn't allow anyone to pass through the defense net, because on the other side of the defense net, everyone was unarmed. The youngster's dark eyes looked down. Then he turned his body sideways and pressed his back against the tree. Then he pulled open the military backpack he was carrying. Inside was the only electronic car she had with her. She had wanted to give it to the Almighty today, but it seemed like she had to use it now. Chapter 1201. The youngster's side profile looked cold under the moonlight. The tear mole at the corner of her eye was very obvious, making her look like a fox immortal. Her fingers brushed past the palm-sized electronic car. She reached into the black scarf and pulled it up. Then she bent down and disappeared into the night like a shadow. There was fog in the forest. Perhaps she could make use of this. The youngster reached out to hold the military dagger at her waist. A glint flashed across her dark eyes. Then she controlled the arrow keys with one hand and headed in the opposite direction. The few of them were still in a conversation. When we came previously, we only heard that there was a regiment here. We never expected to meet a hidden unit. If news of this gets out, it will give the soldiers a lot of pressure. It will save them the trouble of trying to cross the border to capture us. Capture us? The leader laughed, his tone filled with disdain. With these people. Which one of them is King's match? That's right, with King around, even if they cross the border, they will only be sending themselves to their deaths. The few of them burst into laughter. Their expressions were extremely arrogant and bloodthirsty. Right at this moment, a unique sound, similar to the sound of a gasoline cap being opened, entered their ears. But it wasn't normal for such a sound to be heard here. When they heard the sound, all of them stilled. Even their backs could tell that they were on high alert. Even though it was a small movement, it was enough to show that these people were indeed, as Bojo had said, they weren't easy targets. The leader was the fastest to react. He immediately looked to the right, and his face went blank for a moment. Actually, it wasn't his fault that his expression was blank. It was mainly because of the thing he saw. A red heart lantern. A small electronic car with a red heart lantern. F***CK. Was such a thing even supposed to appear here? The leader's lips twitched visibly. The four mercenaries beside him had an indescribable expression on their faces. That wasn't all. As the small electronic car neared, they could see the marks on the red heart lantern. They couldn't understand the Chinese characters at all. Of course, the shooter was the only one who understood, but he could only speak. "Boss, what is this?" The leader didn't answer. Instead, he narrowed his eyes, and a sinister aura overflowed from his eyes. There must be someone here. It wasn't a rabbit just now. Shoot. Before the electronic car could get close, the leader had already raised his gun. With just one shot, the electronic car was flipped over, and the red heart lights flickered. In the jungle, such a color of light was somewhat chilling to look at. "Boss." The person who shot the gun opened his mouth again. It was not because of anything else, but because the overturned electronic car had flipped over again. However, the lights were off, and it was quietly parked there, looking a little embarrassed. Someone is controlling it. The leader was not stupid. Go and find that person. Yes. The other two took a step forward. The electronic car moved again. This time, it was moving faster than before. F***CK. As soon as the word shooter came out of his mouth, suddenly, a voice came from the electronic car. "Mr. Chin, please unlock the voice password lock. You will have 3 chances." The 5 of them paused, and the expressions on their faces became more colorful. "Boss, is this car talking?" The leader didn't have time to react. The electronic car made a few more sounds. "Countdown to unlock the password begins. You have 10 seconds. 10. The shooter subconsciously waited for it to count to 9. Unexpectedly, the electronic car changed its tone and said lazily, 0. The corner of the shooter's mouth twitched. Was the 10-second countdown eaten by a dog? "Sorry, if I don't answer the correct voice in the specified time, I will explode. Sigh, I'm so sad." The electronic car circled around as if it was really sad. It also seemed that the shot just now had hit its electronic circuit, and the wheels were a little paralyzed. Explode. The shooter didn't think much of it. He raised his hand and shot the electronic car again. Seeing that it didn't react at all, he said, "It's already broken, and it still explodes?" The leader's eyes narrowed deeper and deeper. What's the point of arguing with an electronic car? Go and find this person. Go and find this person who is pretending to be a ghost. Yes. As soon as the shooter finished speaking, he wanted to turn around and leave. However, a loud bang rang out directly from his left side, causing his ears to buzz. The explosion was real. Although it couldn't kill anyone, it was enough to make 2 of the people inside lose their 5 senses for a moment. The remaining 3 cursed it, and wanted to go forward to drag them away. The one closest to the grass had just taken a step forward when a gust of wind appeared behind him. A gust of wind appeared behind him. Just as he was about to turn around and shoot, his neck was pressed against by someone from behind. Then a knife cut his throat. It was so straightforward that he couldn't believe that there was such a person behind him. He didn't even have time to look back before the other person let go of his neck. A soft and lazy voice was pressed against his ear, and only one word was said. 1. When did that person appear? Why didn't they feel it at all? And what did he mean by 1? The mercenary wanted to speak, but he could only mutter softly. He pressed against his neck with one hand and stretched the other in front of him. His trachea was cut, and his entire body started to twitch. He wanted them to turn back. It was just that this figure appeared at the right time. The people in front were already focused on the aftermath of the explosion and on their boss, who was affected by it. No one looked behind them. They hadn't expected someone to be so daring, appearing when there were 5 of them. Bojo made use of this time difference. If she had to describe it, it would be like killing someone while being invisible, and then retreating after killing someone. Her movements were like flowing water, like a phantom in the night. The moment you felt a sense of danger, it meant that she had already finished killing. Just like what Bojo had said, every hacker was a magician to a certain extent. Magicians were successful because they knew how to divert the audience's attention. The electronic car was a diversion point. The moment it appeared, Bojo started to move in the opposite direction. An ambush. Cutting off the back row. That was what she wanted to do. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.